spam, so that
Okay.
it's not.
You don't want people to
Yeah.
see that. Got it. So we are live. Can you guys confirm that it's working fine? Like this
And YouTube as well?
Yeah.
Okay, I see live. Let me open it.
There will be a 20 to 30-second delay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's time for us to broadcast. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can already see on YouTube.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, broadcasting.
There will be a 20 to 30-second delay.
So people who just joined, we're going to start the meetup in a minute or two. All right, let's start Vue India meetup. So welcome to Vue Bangalore 27th meetup and Vue India's first meetup. And just to introduce myself, I'm Nimit Bhargava. I co-organize Vue Bangalore along with Sangeeth. I've been part of Vue Bangalore community for almost 2 years now, and I've been organizing Vue Bangalore meetup for around 1 year now. And it's a great experience interacting with Vue community in Bangalore. And yeah, I'm really excited about this meetup, being the first Vue India meetup. I want to give a shout out to Vue Bangalore community. So we are 1,000 members strong, and we have been having regular meetups from past 1 year. Our meetup cycle is monthly, so we have events monthly accordingly, and we also have like a detailed process for a speaker to speak at our meetups. So we have dedicated panels in Vue Bangalore who helps speakers to basically make their talks much more better. And we also support first-time speakers to decide their topics and even give them the topics if they're not sure of what to speak. So if you're a first-time speaker, you can always reach out to our Twitter channel, Twitter group, which is at VueBLR, and we are always there to help new people and any women in tech also. We really we are interested in that. So just to give you a little summary about Vue India communities that we have in India. So we have Vue Bangalore in southern part of India, as well as Vue Hyderabad. And coming little upside, we have Vue Pune and Vue Surat and Vue Rajkot as of now. We are open for more communities to take part in Vue. And yeah. So let me introduce James as the first speaker for today. James is an undergrad student, and he has recently created his library to create Maven web applications. Yes, so now I think James can start this. Yeah. James, can you share your screen and start?
I hope I'm properly audible. Hello?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Nimit, for the introduction.
Thank you.
Yeah, hey there, guys. Yeah, so I hope my slides are right. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to be talking about MEVN-CLI. So as the tagline says, Lightspeed setup for MEVN stack web-based applications. Yeah, so first of all, a bit about myself. As Nimit said, I'm an undergraduate student from Kerala. I'm pretty much into open source software at the moment. I'm also going to be a mentor for Google Summer of Code as part of the project Webpack. You can find me on Twitter on the Twitter handle James_MatMax and on GitHub on the handle JamesGeorge007. Yeah, so let's talk a bit about the present scenario. So developers are required to spend considerable amount of time setting up things related to the local environment. And we know that there is a thing known as the framework boom when it comes to the JavaScript ecosystem. So each and every day, a new framework comes out. And of course, it is expected to be accompanied by a utility that is expected to be a CLI utility. So CLI utilities are just expected to serve the purpose of project scaffolding. Providing an in-house solution to tackle this problem is, of course, gonna add to the developer experience. Yeah, so let's talk about the existing solutions as of now. So as I was saying, a dedicated CLI tooling is expected to be shipped with each and every framework that comes out of the ecosystem. Saying about speaking. Sorry, Nimit.
I think you're not able to, your screen is not visible.
No, not visible. Oh, just a minute, guys. Okay. Okay. I hope now you're able to see my screen.
It's visible.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So guys, as I was saying, a dedicated CLI tooling is expected to be shipped with each and every framework that comes out of the JavaScript ecosystem. So speaking about the Vue.js ecosystem, we have the official tooling, the official CLI utility called Vue CLI. And as opposed to the traditional approach, Vue CLI extends its purpose beyond bare project scaffolding. And a very good example for this is Angular CLI. So as you guys might know, Angular is a heavyweight framework, and of course it requires a dev utility that does the job that does much better than just project scaffolding. Yeah, so Angular CLI is one of the best examples. And when it comes to the server-side JavaScript ecosystem, we have plethora of frameworks built on top of Express. And citing an example, we have Next.js that comes with an accompanied CLI solution. Yeah, so the point I was saying, yeah, so the point is that the CLI utilities or adjoining dev utilities should serve the purpose. The purpose of CLI utilities should be much beyond, should be much more than just the project scaffolding phase. Yeah, so, and of this thought, I made MEVN-CLI. And as the tagline says, it is a Lightspeed setup for MEVN stack-based apps and opinionated CLI solution for the MEVN stack. So it takes care of everything from the project scaffolding phase to the deployment phase, thereby making developers more productive. So the only thing that the developers are required to do is to write actual code. Yeah, so now I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough regarding the tooling, its usage. So let me just quickly return to my terminal. Okay, I assume you guys can see my terminal window. I just navigated to the desktop path, and now I'm just gonna bootstrap a new Maven stack application on my current desktop path. To do that, we have a command for that purpose. Just type in Maven init and the name of your application. Say I'm gonna go with sample. And now you're going to be prompted with the 4 of the available boilerplate templates to choose from. So the very first thing is basic. So basic means you're going to have a pretty basic template as the name suggests, and the view router comes by default. And the very next option is PWA. So PWA means the progressive web app. So if the users require any of the features that if the users are looking forward to leverage the capabilities put forward by progressive web apps, you can go with that option. And for the third option, we have GraphQL. So if the users require to create an application on by consuming Apollo GraphQL clients, they can go with the third option. And for final option, we have Nuxt.js. So if the users are required to have server-side rendering, he or she can go with the final option. And for the course of this demo, we can go with the basic option. I just hit enter, and yeah. So the very next prompt, it asks you whether you require a server-side template. That means whether you require a full stack application or just a client side. So I'm gonna hit enter. Yeah. So now we have a new folder created in the current path, and let me quickly navigate to that folder. Yeah. Okay. Let me quickly open it my code editor. Okay, so as you guys can see, we have both the client and server folders. Okay, and now let me quickly turn back to my terminal. Okay, and the very next command is Maven serve, and with that you can serve both your client as well as your server. And just a minute, guys. Okay. Okay, and I'm typing in Maven serve client. So what this command does is that it just installs the dependencies and goes ahead with serving the basic template in your local environment. So it is going to install the dependencies for us, and later going ahead and serving it in a local environment. So it's gonna take a moment. Let's open a new tab in our terminal, and okay, and type in Maven serve again. Have to start the server. Yeah, so it undergoes the same set of steps, installs the dependencies and fires up the and goes ahead with the process of starting the server. And in this case, an Express.js web-based application. Okay, and everything is being done. And let's go to localhost 9000. Yeah, so as you guys can see, we have the basic client-side template as well as the server-side template. And now let me return back to my terminal. Okay, and the very next command is generate. So with that command, you can generate any of the components for the client side, as well as the correct template that is the create, rate, update, and delete functionality for the server side. So for this case, we shall go with the server side, and we can quickly have a correct template within our local environment. So it is going to install the respective dependencies as well as the MongoDB client in order to interact with the database. So it is going to ask us for the URL, and let's go with the default one. Okay. Okay, let me return back to my code editor. Yeah. So as you can see, we have a couple of new folders being created by the respective command. We have the controllers, the models being created by the CLI for us. And let me quickly create a couple of front-end commands. Just a minute. Okay, so I'm really sorry if I was a bit quick. So yeah, I hope you'll be able to follow what I'm just doing. So as of now, we have just got a pretty basic template to work on top of, and I just opened the basic template in my code editor, and that is what happened as of now. And yeah, so let me show you guys again. Yeah, so the very next command, as I said, is the generate command. So the generate command. So generate command is supposed to generate the components as well as the server-side thread templates. And in this case, what I require is a brand new component for the client side. And for that, I'm going to type in MEVN generate. And please, and you're going to be created with a respective prompt saying that please provide a name for the new component. And I'm going to go with users. Okay, so what we intend is to display a list of users that we query from the database. Yeah, so that is going to be a page component. So that requires a dedicated route config. Okay, so as you can see, we are being created with a message saying that successfully created users.vue on the respective tab. Yeah, so let's go back to our code editor and let's inspect the new change. Yeah, so we have a brand new component here, users.vue, and just a minute. Okay, client source. Okay, users.vue. Yeah, so you can, as you can see, we have a pretty basic boilerplate available for respective component. And now let me just navigate to the users tab. Yeah, so as you can see, we have got the corresponding route updated. Yeah, so the corresponding file is being updated. So we have a brand new import statement for the respective component as well as the respective configuration for a dedicated path for the component. Yeah, so that's what the generate command is supposed to do. And let me just quickly grab a boilerplate template. Users, okay. And guys, just a note, so I'm not gonna be live coding for the course of this demo, taking into consideration the time constraints. Okay, I'm gonna quickly copy and paste a boilerplate template. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Now, so as you can see, we have an error saying that respective component consumes Axios, but we don't have it installed. So we have a command for installing additional plugins on the go. And for that, we can type in MEVN add Axios, and we are going to be prompted with whether you need to go with the client or the server. So for this case, we are going to go with the client directory, and it is going to install Axios for us. It's going to take a while depending on the network. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, that's fine. And now let me quickly come back to my code editor and just a couple of tweaks left. So for the server directory, we just ran a generate command for the server directory, and that generated these respective files. And we are required to make a couple of, so as you can notice, we have a couple of lines commented over here. So that is up to the user. So if you require the Mongoose client to be working, you have the template set up for that, and it is up to you. Okay, so let's quickly have a server up and running. Okay, let's quickly inspect everything's fine. Maybe I can serve both the client as well as the server. Okay, let me quickly update a couple of other components as well. So for the client, we can have a couple of other components as well. Say we can type in the generate command again and provide a name for the new component. And in this case, it is going to be create. Okay, so it's going to be a page component. Yeah, successfully created respective component. And so as in the previous case, I'm going to be grabbing a boilerplate for that case as well. Create. Okay, let me quickly turn that to my code editor and create. Okay, that's fine. And now let me generate two more components, the same command, and it's going to be update page component. Okay. Let me quickly grab a boilerplate for that, the update component. Okay, return back to my code editor and yeah, update. And this one more tweak remaining for the root component. Gonna have you need to configure it accordingly. Okay. Just a minute, guys. I'm setting things up. Okay, so okay for the client, and it's gonna take a while. Yeah. So we are having a couple of components over here. Users. Okay. So as of now, so by default we just had these home and about components. So I just went ahead and created users and create component, and using the couple of boilerplate template that I already had. And now let me quickly start up my server. No users. Yeah, so our server is up and running. And now let's quickly create a user. Say the ID would be 123. Name would be my name, and the age 20. Okay. Yeah. So as you can see, we have the correct functionality over here, and we can create a brand new entry. Age say 34. Yeah. So we have everything working over here. You can delete the entry as well as update respective entry. Okay, we have to just update the route config a bit. Okay, respective component. Okay. Okay. Say. Okay. Yeah. So so we have the correct functionality over here. We have just created 3 more components, and we have the server up and running with the basic red template. And now what we're supposed to do is to deploy this application to production. And for that we have a dedicated command for that purpose. And let's quickly stop our client as well as the server. And first of all, let's deploy the server. And for that, let's type in the command MEVN deploy, and that is going to prompt us whether we need to deploy the client or the server. And in this case, we can call it the server, and that is going to take a while. And let's keep the name as MEVN server demo. Just a minute, guys. One more. Okay, it will take a while. MEVN server demo. Okay, this time it's fine. Yeah, so let's wait for a while until everything is being okay. Now let me quickly grab a URL that I have. So so we are required to provide the path to a database as a service, and in this case I have already set up my MLabs account, and it just provided the respective path to the service, and now everything would be working fine, and we will be having a server deployed to Heroku. Yeah, so we can wait for a while until that's done. And let's quickly go back to our client on the, yeah, and for the client, we need to update the respective API URLs to be the server that is being deployed to production. So yeah, so we have the server deployed to production on Heroku. Let's quickly inspect. So the respective data is being pulled off from the my MLabs account. Yeah, so the server queries the database as a service, and it just dumps the data, or it turns the data from the database on the cloud. Yeah, so let's quickly return back to our terminal and deploy the client side. And for this case, we have changed. We need to grab this URL and turn back to our code editor. Yeah, so let me just update it. Okay, yeah. So a couple of more components needs to be updated. Similarly, create, okay, Just a minute. Okay, it needs to be updated in the same manner. Okay, then the update component is already being updated, and let's go the users component, and we have got this instance over here. Okay, let's quickly update the URL to reflect the server that we just deployed, and let's quickly return back to our terminal and deploy the client side. Yeah, so type in the command MEVN deploy, and we can go ahead with the client side for now. And so as of now, we support these platforms, Surge and Heroku, and we can go with Heroku. Yeah, so it's going to take a while. For the client side, it would take a bit more than the server side. So, so if you're aware, for Heroku, if you're required to deploy a client-side application to Heroku, we have to go through a number of steps. For that, we have to set up our own Express instance, Express.js server in order to deploy our client-side application, and which serves our build. So MEVN-CLI does that for us. MEVN client demo. Okay. So it is gonna do the job for us behind the scenes, and we have the logs over here. So behind the hoods, we have in Heroku CLI working for us, and it's gonna take a while, a bit more than the server side, since as I said before, it requires a bit more configuration than the server, and hopefully everything would be fine soon. Okay, installing dependencies, and yeah. So as I was saying, it requires an instance of Express as well as serve static, so that it just serves the static content. So deploying to Heroku, deploying a client-side application to Heroku is a bit different than other platforms. Yeah. So for the future, we are looking forward to support other platforms, say Netlify, Zeep, Now, etc. As of now, we have just two options: Heroku and Surge. Yeah, so we have the process logs over here, and it is gonna deploy to Heroku building for production, and everything would be fine soon. Yeah, hopefully, okay, cache and build. Okay. So as I said, it's gonna take some time, maybe. But it won't be the case for the very next time. It only takes a bit more time for the running it for the very first time. That won't be the case for the up. Yeah, released and it's deployed to Heroku. We have a message over here. Have successfully deployed to Heroku. Yeah. Yeah, we have the application over here. Loading. Yeah, so we have the respective data being pulled off from the database. So if you took a close note over here, we have the name John and age 20. Here we have name George and age 30, and respective data is being pulled from the server and reflected over in the client side. And we can create any more entries as we require. Say, and age. Yeah, so that's been done, and we can delete any more entries. Yeah, so as you guys can see, we just deployed a full stack MEVN stack application to Heroku, and it is being fully functional. Yeah, so the thing is that MEVN-CLI is being capable of handling everything for you. So being a developer, the only thing that you need to focus is writing actual code, and everything behind the scenes is being taken care of by MEVN-CLI. Yeah, so let me quickly return to my slides. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so so now let's have a quick look at the FAQs, the frequently asked questions. So so this question is often being asked. So being a front-end developer, why should I use MEVN-CLI? So this question is often being asked. So by hearing the term MEVN-CLI, people often there's a misconception that it is only intended for full stack engineers, but that's not the case. So, if you have noticed, we have a prompt saying that whether you require a server directory as part that shows up as part of the init command, and that means it is completely suitable for front-end engineers as well. So yeah, so I hope that answers that question. And now I prefer frameworks on top of Express for the server side. Can I expect MEVN-CLI extending its support on the same? Yeah, for sure. Even we have a ticket open on GitHub for this. Uh, for the future, we are looking, as of now, we are just supporting Express.js for the server side. And for the future, we are, of course, looking to onboard more server-side frameworks on top of JavaScript and on top of Express. Yeah, so and saying about the future roadmap, as of now, I am working on a brand new release. So as of now, we have the stable release as 1.7.5. So if you guys, so if you take a look at the official GitHub repo, we have the latest release as 1.7.5, and as of now, I'm working on a brand new release 1.8, and I just made a new beta release, and you can just give it a try by installing with npm. Yeah, so we have the documentation for that. Yeah, so you can install the CLI with this command. Yeah, so you can install the CLI with this command npm install -c -CLI, and if you're required to try out the latest beta release, then you can just use MEVN-CLI @beta. Yeah, so that would make the CLI available to your local system. Yeah, so yep. Yeah, so we have talked about the GitHub repo, the documentation, and this is the Twitter handle, MEVN_CLI. So if you wish to catch up with the updates, you can just go ahead and follow the Twitter handle. Yeah, so we post about the updates regarding the new releases, and if you wish to stay updated regarding the releases, you can go ahead and follow the Twitter handle. Yeah, so saying about, we also have a collective page. So if you guys, so if you wish to support us financially, we can open collective page. Yeah, so yeah, so that's it. And so if you guys have any questions, I will be open to answer them. Yeah.
So we can ask these question and answers from the Zoom, or if a user is watching the stream at YouTube, they can just comment it. Let's wait a minute for any questions.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. So how your experience has been picking up Vue versus React? So why did you pick up Vue.js?
Yeah, so my experience with the front end world is kind of like, so I started with Vue for sure, and the thing is that I gave it a try on other frameworks, say React, Angular, and I didn't really like it that much. And when it comes to Vue, we have everything is being available within a single component. Say we have the single file concept of single file components. We have this template style and the script part being made available in a single file, and what to say, it's kind of like more less complicated as compared to other toolings that we have out there. Yeah, so that thought led me to try out Vue, and also I had this thought of I should be able to contribute back to the community, and that thought led me to make this tool. Yep.
Pretty interesting, I would say. We have Gusto as well with us, and he has posted a question on YouTube saying, did you try to make it work with Vue 3?
Yeah, not yet, but we are, but it's still in plan. Yeah, as of now, it just supports Vue version 2, but support for Vue 3 is, of course, in the future roadmap for sure. It's gonna come up soon.
Okay, if we don't have any questions for this talk,
Mm-hmm.
we can move to the next one. And if you still want to ask a question to James, the Q&A would be open and you can ask. And maybe at the end of the meetup, he can answer a few questions. Right.
Yeah, sure.
So I can share, let me start. So yeah, thanks, James, for your insightful talk about creating a new library. And yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You're welcome. Going further, we have a community shout out for Vue Hyderabad. So Vue Hyderabad is run by Praveen. Unfortunately, he couldn't be present in today's meetup, but so maybe I can discuss with him, from his side. So Vue Hyderabad has been there, and even Vue Hyderabad and Vue Bangalore had like crossover meetups where same day we had the meetups, and at the end of the meetup we both live streamed. This is before COVID-19 situation where we had physical meetups. So Vue Hyderabad and Vue Bangalore had this interactive session at the end of each of their meetups. And if you are from Hyderabad community, then Vue Hyderabad is the go-to place for your Vue related things. They are pretty much active on Twitter, so you can go ahead and check their Vue Hyderabad handle. That's it. And is there anybody from Vue Hyderabad in this live stream right now? Anybody from Hyderabad who is looking? Right. And if you are there, just give a shout out to yourself on the Q&A, and we'll give you a shout out there. Right. Moving further, we have our next talk by Sathish Kumar. It's on infinite scrolling and infinite problems. Just give me a moment to check with the speaker. So I think the talk will start in a minute or two. So I just got an update. Our next speaker will be joining in a minute or two. So sorry to keep you waiting. So until Satish join, how about we get to know from where you guys are? So maybe on Zoom you can reply, or if you're watching it from YouTube, you can reply which country you are from or which community you are viewing our event from. It would be very interesting to see. So I think Satish is here. Satish, you ready to start?
Okay.
All right, I'll hand over everything to you. So I think before Satish shared his screen, I just want to quickly mention that. Um, so if you have a question or anything that you want to ask to the speaker, you can share it to Q&A session or the YouTube chat, and we'll make sure that your questions we ask the speaker at the end of his talk. So yeah. Satish, you can go ahead and share your screen and start the session.
Yeah. Give me just 1 minute. I'll share the screen.
So we asked, meanwhile Satish is preparing, we asked a question that where people are joining. So we got someone from Hyderabad, someone from Surat, Gujarat, um, someone from Bangalore as well. And we have another person from Surat. And we do have international viewers as well at this point. We have Gusto from Poland, and we also have, there are around I think 3 or 4 people more from Bangalore. It seems like more of Bangalore people who are watching, Bangaloreans. And yeah, right. Go ahead, Satish. Good luck.
Thank you, Nimit, for first of all giving this opportunity, and thank you to the entire community. And good afternoon to all. Okay. So today's topic is infinite scrolling and infinite problems. So before introducing anything on this topic, I have some disclaimers. So this is a presentation that we made at a short notice. Yeah, we prepared this presentation for some other event also last time. Unfortunately, we couldn't work on the slides because of lockdown and all that, and then there is a thing. So another disclaimer is that I'm a person, I'm a blind person who is going to present this session. So please do not, please bear with the visuals of this slide if it is very minimal, or even if it is not there at all. Please bear with me, because we didn't have enough time to work on these presentations. And the second thing is, we also had a demo page for this. There is a prototype demo that we wanted to showcase in this presentation. For some reason, the demo page is moved out of the server and it is not accessible. So I'm sorry for that. But anyway, while linking this presentation in the future, within 1 or 2 days, I'll link this presentation and give it to Nimit, so that uh, the demo page will be up and running, so you can see that also. And sorry for that inconvenience too. Okay. So first about me. I hope you can see that.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay. So I'm Sathish Kumar. I'm a senior accessibility consultant at. Yeah, so I'm a senior accessibility consultant working at DQ Systems Incorporated and DQ Software Private Limited India at Hyderabad. Um, so as I said, I was born blind. My digital experience. Okay, so when we yeah, so I started my digital journey in the year 2006 with first time I was using a screen reader, which is a software that is used by many blind and low vision users to access their computers and mobile devices. Um, and so I did my MPhil in English, and then I moved to accessibility field. I'm an avid reader. I love books, music, beatboxing, and all that. I mean, I'm there in all the trades, but master of none, you can say. Okay. So that's about me. And so let me move on to the topic infinite scrolling and infinite problems. Okay. So I've created a hypothetical story for you all. It may be true, it may not be true. So if you find a logical gap like our Indian cinemas, please forgive for those logical gaps. Okay. But there is a story behind this topic that I want to share with you. Just an imagination. So it may happen, it may not happen. That's that's absolutely fine. Okay. Uh, so what is happening? Okay, one request, please do not put anything in the public chat because it is disturbing my screen reader. So if you could note down and ask the questions in the last, it would be really helpful. So yeah, so I just came up with an imaginative story. So please do not look at the logics on this. Okay. Uh, so imagine that there are four people, uh, friends at office, and they want to buy a particular camera. Imagine like that. And this particular camera is listed on only one particular site. And one friend told that, oh, this camera looks very good. And so they go to their home and they are searching for this camera. So one person is a blind person. Okay, do not ask me, do they really require a camera? It's a story, that's all. Okay, so this person is trying to look up for the camera. He goes to the product listing page. There are close to 600 results for that camera, and he tabs and tabs on the keyboard, and unfortunately he misses that particular model, and he doesn't know where he's at lost. So the same thing is happening with another person who is a motor disabled person. I mean, maybe he has tremors in his hand, and so he's not able to use the mouse. So he's an avid keyboard user at the end of the day. So he also tries to do that. So the content has, again, he tabs and tabs, and obviously he also misses the same thing. So that's what is happening. And the fourth user is a speech input user. So what do you mean by speech input? Imagine you are using a voice control feature in your Mac machine or iPhone. That is called a speech input. And there are other softwares too in order to give us speech input instead of a mouse or a keyboard. So through that, he's trying to make all the elements, all the camera products that are listed, he wants to activate. Unfortunately, the content loads as and when you scroll. So it is not possible for us to for him to get all the camera products that is available on that particular product listing page. So even he that person also misses to identify that content. And then the last person is obviously he doesn't need to worry about it. He just uses a mouse who scrolls down, and there are say 600 to 700 products listed in the same page, and obviously he was able to he could still find it, but there was a kind of exertion that causes, because he's just scrolling and scrolling, and sometimes due to the lack of attention or whatever, he also tries, but obviously he can find out, but somehow he misses. So at the end of the day, the purpose of that product listing page is lost. So that is a story. So as I said, do not look for a logical explanation for this story. It's a story at the end of the day. Okay. Now keep all these 4 user groups in your mind when you listen to this, or when you hear me out in this presentation. Okay. So the topic, as I said, is all about infinite scrolling and infinite problems. Okay. So this is the agenda we are going to share today. What is infinite scrolling? Good, bad, and ugly of this particular design pattern. Affected user groups. Is role equal to feed accessible? So you must have heard, as a lot of all of us are JavaScript developers at the end of the day. So you must have heard ARIA and role equal to feed and all that. Is there an alternate design pattern? Yes, we can develop that. Okay, this prototype demo, I'll try to work on it. If it is not working, then I'm sorry for that. And the last one is takeaway. Okay. So a good example for an infinite scrolling is nothing but Twitter. It was Twitter which introduced this concept of infinite scrolling. So the definition, okay. So the definition is listed in precise way in this slide. So I just want to tell that this design was imagined using the scroll wheel of the mouse. So the tweets will appear as you scroll down the page, and the content would obviously move above or up, sorry, not above. Okay, and then as you scroll up again, the previously viewed content may come. If it is a live tweet, then obviously it may not come also. So there is a chance. That is how the infinite scrolling was imagined by Twitter. Okay, so I already told you that social media sites use this, and even many other sites also they use when they want to load their social media content on their site. So what is good about this design? Okay. So as I said, if it is a live loading content, yes, this is an absolute gift for everyone, because it is easy for the users to scroll and see the live loading content. Okay. And see, Twitter is a kind of content, or Twitter, Facebook, or these kind of social media content is usually an entertainment level. So all the content gets the same level of importance. So there is nothing like so for that kind of content, when you have a same level of importance, yes, it is very good to have a scrolling type of content. And the next one is where the user just want to browse the site. Okay, so in an e-commerce site where PLP or some other content is listed, they just want to browse the site. They don't want to select, okay, I just want to see what is available. Based on that, later I will take a decision. Only in those cases, this is a very good design. I agree. Okay, so now there is a bad side of it. So in a live loading content, or in an infinite scrolling scenario, users cannot easily locate exactly what they're looking for. That is one problem that we see. It causes psychological exertion. This is not my point of view. People have done a lot of user experience studies on infinite scrolling, and the result is that when people scroll the content, it causes a psychological exertion, a bit of tiredness, saying that, oh my god, what kind of page is that? Because when you see it is as equal as when somebody loads a full plate of food, you feel that you don't want to eat anymore. So it's a kind of same thing. A page full of content that loads continuously, okay, then you don't have a sense of satisfaction. You don't have the sense of, using that site or a content. That's what happens in most of the cases. Okay, and this is a psychological problem that we need to understand. Now, is there an ugly side to this infinite scrolling? The answer is yes. So here is that one also. It leaves out many user groups because it is first imagined with the scroll wheel. And as I said, there are a lot of users who cannot use mouse. Similarly, it leaves out keyboard users, okay, speech input users, switch control users. Okay, this is something you can Google what is a switch control and you can find out what is a switch, who uses it and all that. Particularly motor disabled people use this. Okay, users with limited cognitive disabilities. Okay, that group is like any people who with learning disabilities like dyslexia, you must have seen in Tare Zameen Par. And there are people who have cerebral palsy, who cannot remember things. There are other people who have attention deficit disorder, so they cannot be attentive in one particular concept in one particular thing at a given point of time. So even those people are called cognitively disabled people. And finally, screen reader users. So screen reader user will also include a wide spectrum of people like blind, low vision, and other people with disabilities too. So this particular design does not actually think about all these users. So it is just one-sided is the general idea. Okay. So now I've already told you the affected groups also, but I also want to tell you how these groups are affected. So keyboard users have no other way of navigating the site other than tabbing, shift tabbing, or probably scrolling the page up and down. But scrolling the page up and down using arrow keys or page down is not equivalent to a scroll wheel. So we have to understand that part also. Okay. So, so copious tabbing is obviously going to cause a lot of stress for them and they may miss out content. Okay, and if they are caught in an infinite scrolling content, they will not be able to move out of the content to go to the footer or header content. So that is also another problem, and it consumes time for them to use the content or consume the content itself. So that is the problem with keyboard only users. Okay, switch control users have a different set of problems. Okay, switch control is a device that actually what do you call that only has two keys in at maximum or maximum three keys. So one is a tab key, another one is an enter key. So if the user has to imagine that user has to use a switch device, okay, he has to go through the entire site, entire page altogether from header to footer. And if he's caught in this design pattern, then he has no other way to come out. He will be really frustrated. She will be really frustrated, and they will come out of the site at the end of the day. So this is the switch control users problem. So speech input users, how are they going to be affected? So generally voice control feature. I mean, if you want to try out, you can try out in Mac. If you are using a Mac, you can go to accessibility in your preferences and then, in your system preferences and activate voice control. How it works is you can number all the elements on the screen, and then based on the numbering, you can activate that element. Now, unfortunately, a voice control, since the infinite scrolling loads only a set of content, and because you need to scroll up and scroll down to load more content or load less content, the users, first of all, are not aware that there are more content coming. And second thing is, the invisible contents are something that voice control may not be able to activate. So it will be very tough, and users may not remember where they saw a particular content so that they can go and activate those links or buttons. So it is a very bad user experience for them also. So cognitive users, I already described which user groups will be. So they will have sometimes limited memory. okay, learning disabilities, reading disabilities. So they will be affected because we are loading only one, contents continuously based on the scrolling or tabbing. They may not remember, they may not focus on that particular area for a long time. Okay, they will obviously need a break. They'll get frustrated, and there are chances that they would surely leave the site if they cannot do anything on this. So the last one is screen reader users. So screen reader users, as I said, blind and low vision users in particular, but there are other cognitive users also who will fall into that category. So one is screen reader users mainly work on predictable way of navigation. If that is not possible, and if unexpected content is again loading, it will be a big problem for them, and it will take long time to perform their task. Again, copious tabbing, again, may not be able to skip the content as I said. They will also consume time. And imagine if the page does not have headings or landmarks or any other structural semantical elements, then they are caught. So even they will be facing the same problem as I said. So now we have seen the different user groups that are affected by this design. So is there a way to solve it? Is there an official way from W3C or anywhere else that they are providing a solution for this? Actually, yes. They thought they provided a solution. Okay. And I'll tell you what that solution is. Okay. So many of you must have heard as developers the concept of ARIA. So obviously a lot of people are using role equal to presentation, this one, that one, role equal to button and all that. So one such role that is introduced by ARIA is called role equal to feed. And that is mainly introduced to solve this infinite scrolling problem. Okay, what it does is it creates a landmark or creates a region so that you can, using the screen reader shortcut, you can skip that particular region. That is the way it works. Okay, but does it have any challenges in implementing? What is wrong in implementing that? And if there is a solution, why is this session required in the first place? That is a question anyone would ask, right? There are problems. So these are the challenges that I see here. One, ARIA is not meant for all the user groups. So obviously role equal to feed also does not include all the user groups. It is meant for only screen readers, and at the max, maybe some advanced voice control softwares may benefit out of this, but not all the apps support this, even though some of the screen readers, as of now, keyboard users will not be benefiting out of this. Cognitively limited users may not benefit out of this. So this is not an actual solution that we are looking at. Okay, I went so fast. I'm sorry for that. Do you guys have any questions you can ask? Hello?
Yeah, I think one of the user mentioned that few days back there was Global Accessibility Awareness Day as well. So no question.
Yeah, that was
as such,
just an
but
information that he provided. Yeah.
Yes, yes, not a question.
Okay, sure. So shall I proceed then?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Just so somebody asked, Startup Sanatana, Venkat.kl asks, any insight on accessibility related things with respect to voice? Should I
With
repeat?
respect to voice.
Yes. Like Amazon Alexa skills or something like that.
So we are not focusing on that particular topic, Venkat. I'm sorry for that. We are focusing on infinite scrolling and infinite problems, which is a design related thing. We are not taking any topic on Amazon Alexa and Siri as of now. Okay. I don't think Siri is a very good option if you want to use only for accessibility. And I think the same for even Amazon and Alexa. It can perform all the virtual tasks that you're doing, like make a call on that and call on this. But I don't think they are voice control. They can be a replacement for interaction. So we are not talking about those things now. Okay. So now, what is the solution? If ARIA also cannot provide a solution for this particular problem, then what is the next solution that what is the next solution? I mean, yeah. So as I said, Venkat, the Amazon, Alexa, and Siri and all cannot perform a task like a voice control or a naturally dragon speech input software. So they are just your virtual personal assistant. They cannot do any other task. So there are multiple challenges, but we are not discussing that now. Okay. So yeah. So as I was saying, what is the next step to, if I can't make this role equal to feed is not helping me at all as a developer, then what is the next solution for me to fix this issue? So one is, for any design, we can tweak the design to some extent. You can allow customization. So this is just tweak the design a bit. We are not saying do not use what do you call that, infinite scrolling at all, but just tweak the design. Okay, maybe you can toggle having a have a toggle switch that provides a pagination as well as so you can turn off the pagination, it will go to a default infinite scrolling, or you can turn on the pagination so you can have pages on that. So it is just a design thing that we can do. Or else you can also provide a skip link at the top of the infinite scrolling content, which will take, when I click that skip link, like any skip to main content, it will skip the entire section. You can see this kind of implementation in BBC websites. BBC is providing this kind of skip links basically. Whenever they have live content or live tweeting or live loading contents, they have this option. You can check it out there. Okay. Or and the second thing is, when you are designing itself, make these choices. So I'm okay to provide an infinite scrolling, but is there any problems with any user groups? So always do a research, come up with some customizations in the design, and then you can make the design as it is, but provide that toggle switch or a skip link or something of that sort. Or even you can have a load more also. So say after 20 products in an e-commerce site, click a load more, and then you also have a load less and load more. So that way users can remember the first 20, second 20, third 20, even that is also possible. So these are the tweaks that as of now we have seen so far, and we are thinking about, we have thought about so far. Okay. So as I said, the demo content is not loading because the URL is moved out of the server. But what will be there is, as I said, there are some infinitely loading social media content. And at the top of that, we have provided a toggle switch. And the moment you turn on that switch, the infinite scrolling content will turn into a pagination option. So the first 10 links will load, and then you will have page number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then so user can use the pagination, or if he's tired of using that, he can toggle back the infinite scrolling on at the top again. Then he or she will be able to use the infinite scrolling. That is the prototype that we created. Unfortunately, the site is not loading. But anyway, I'll provide the link in this in this slide itself while I'm passing this slide on, so that you can later see that, and then you can also use those kind of design patterns. Okay. So with that, I think so. The takeaway for this particular topic is that one is no design fits for all. So even if we are not talking about people with disabilities, there are people who are non-disabled, who have no physical problems or cognitive issues with them, but they will really feel tired, or they will really feel exerted, and all that exertions will come because of a particular design pattern or a particular choice of the site that is used, choice of the design patterns that is being used on a site. So as I said, one design does not fit for all. Reinvent the design. It's not that we cannot follow a particular pattern, just reinvent it. So allow customization for the users, and then do not use a design that does not suit at all. So unless there is a need for an infinite scrolling, please do not use that. That is what we are trying to say. Okay, so these are the takeaways for this particular presentation. That is, at least I thought. But if you have any takeaways from this presentation, you can also share it with us during Q&A. And with that, I conclude this presentation. If you have any questions, I'll take it up.
Right, and I actually muted all the chats, so I'll resume. So on the Zoom.
Sure.
So now we can do that. So meanwhile, people on Zoom ask you questions. There's already one asked by Gusto. His question, maybe I can pose the question, and maybe your screen reader can help you to read also, right? So from Gusto, the question is from accessibility perspective. Does it make a difference how much new content we load at one time?
Yeah, so from 11 perspective, if you load more content, yes, it makes a difference. It makes sometimes users are not aware, and many a times the predictability aspect that I talked about in my presentation, that goes away. So that doesn't mean that you cannot load the content, but what we are talking about is loading a huge content. Like, for example, having around 600 to 700 products that are scrolling like that. That is a huge take that anybody would feel tired of. So obviously in A11 perspective, yes, it would really make people tired. It would not allow them to look for specific content, and the predictability also goes out. So that is what we mean. Yes.
And we have startup Sanatana ask Venkat.kl asking another question, which is there a way to toggle live loading in Twitter over web browser?
I don't think so, because Twitter itself is like that, right? So there is no point in keeping a toggle for a live loading, because Twitter is a live loading platform. So providing that kind of scenario is something that would actually beat the purpose. So I don't think there is something that way, because you can in Twitter also, when you see a content, there are a lot of other key indicators like hashtags, Twitter handles and all, with which you can actually search for that particular thing. So you can still filter even if the content is lost. I mean, what I'm saying is the content scrolled up and you forgot. There are other ways to look at the content. So as of now, Twitter is not providing any such option as of now.
And we have another question from Gusto. He says, is it okay to provide infinite scroll as an option that can be switched on and off?
Yeah, that is exactly what I said, Gustav. Thank you so much for the question. Long time no see. There is a hi from me also, and yes, you can toggle on or off. That's fine. Any other question? So there is one more thing that I would like to say here. So this is not specific to any UI framework that we are talking about here. So sometimes you may feel, no, this is not about Vue.js. So why this is a topic here? Okay. So this is, you develop infinite scrolling using Vue.js or AngularJS or Bootstrap or whatever platform that whatever framework that you use. The issues are common here. So accessibility is not technology. It's a technology agnostic. You can unmute him if you want.
Oh, so we can, Owen Lab. So Owen Lab has raised his hand, so I'll just allow
Yeah,
him
you can. Yeah,
to
sure.
talk. Is it okay, Owen Lab, to allow? I'll
I
just
think you
allow.
can allow.
I allowed. Okay.
So you can ask your question, please. Okay. So as I said, this is not any technology specific. This is all about how accessibility, how a particular interface really impacts the user groups and how do we fix it. The fixes the toggle way. So we are just giving you an idea. So obviously coding is not going to take much time for you guys to implement. So
We have another question from
yeah, I saw that. Okay.
Mhm.
So I am putting up some references in this slide itself, which I will show now. So examples of role equal to feed. Okay, there are a lot of other blogs. We have digital11way.com, even DQ has a blog, and there are a lot of other blogs out there which give you a lot of information on accessibility. Just we need to write. It is very tough to put a comprehensive list in a PPT. So at least related to this topic, this is what we have. Okay, so any other questions?
So, yeah, Sangeeth here. So, I just wanted to ask, like, if you're providing a toggle between infinite scroll and pagination, which one should be the default? Like, is there a way to like know the preference of the user, or like, I think that has a other bad
No, I think
implications.
there
But
is no preference. That is up to you, because you can by default turn on infinite scrolling also, because obviously mouse users are more at least. But at the same time, if you provide the toggle at the top, they will understand that, right? So they can. It doesn't matter which pattern you are. The moment they encounter a toggle switch that says turn on pagination or turn off pagination, they will understand that, I guess. So there is no default way of looking at.
Achha,
It
okay.
depends on the design preference, and what is the marketing way of a particular site. So that is what it means.
So that part is a compromise that's left up to the development team to make.
Yeah, all that required is that toggle. So it
All
doesn't
right.
matter which is loaded first.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. So any other question? Okay. So these are my contact information. Any day you can send your emails and we'll take up that. If you have any other question. And after revamping this presentation, I would send this link to Nimit. Nimit will in turn share the link with all of you. Okay, so thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you, Nimit and HasGeek and VueBLR for providing me this opportunity. Thanks once again.
Thank you so much for your really good session, I would say. And a lot of people like companies don't really focus on accessibility, and we don't know its value unless we experience or we feel that how important these kind of topics are to your product, and how much even adding small attribute in your HTML can actually change and actually can impact someone's experience so much. So it's really insightful talk, I would say. And yeah, I'm really motivated to include more accessibility in my own apps as well. Right. So I'll just share the next schedule, next talks.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sathish.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So after this talk, we have community shoutouts. We have Vue Surat. And from Vue Surat, we have, I think, Tarun to speak a little bit about his community and yep.
Hey guys. We have just started this Vue Surat community recently only. Like we were been active on Twitter since long, but yeah, we had 1 or 2 meetups yet, and it's just beginning for us. So we are planning more events in the upcoming months, right? So yeah, so would love to have help from Nimit and Praveen, right? For maybe having good speakers around us, and we'll also have to have good sessions with you guys.
Right. I think we have another community shout out at this point, and that is from Rajkot. Rajkot and Surat both are cities in Gujarat. So I think Gujarat is the place for like having Vue. They have these smaller communities growing up in almost Surat and Gujarat. And yeah, I'm really excited to know how the scenario is, because I think in other states we just have one city which has these Vue user groups, but then Gujarat has two. Yeah, and for Vue Gujarat, I will ask Chintan. He leads Vue Rajkot community part. So, Chintan.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
You're quite well audible. Yes.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Chintan, and I represent the Vue Rajkot community. Actually, let me give you a brief history about Vue Rajkot. The way Nimit said that it has a state has 2 Vue communities. First of all, I think in around October, I was the VueBLR speaker. And I think at the time I met Rahul and Swapnil, who were organizing the meetup. If I'm not wrong, Nimit, I think those two were the person who were organizing it. And they told me that why don't you start a Vue community in your city also? So I think around by after a month, we started a small Vue meetup group in my city, and that was the first meetup of Vue Rajkot. So after that, we have never looked back, and the people are more excited to work on Vue. And in our experience, more and more developers are coming from jQuery, they really want to transit to Vue rather and from jQuery, apart from React or Angular. So till now, fingers crossed, we have a very good response for Vue, and we are meeting, I think, around twice a monthly, but no, for informal sessions, like for a tea or coffee in a place. Obviously before COVID lockdown, and we had a proper meetup with a presentation. I think we had around 2 of them for a proper meetup. So, and I think I did talk to Mayur as well from Vue Surat, and I'm sure we'll do something like crossover, like Nimit had said that Bangalore and Hyderabad had said. But I'm looking forward to talk to Mayur, and I'm sure we'll have something crossover for Rajkot and Surat community. That's brief introduction of the Rajkot community till now.
Thank you so much, Chintan. So if anybody is from Gujarat, you know which places to go to. Like either you can go to Vue Surat or Vue Rajkot. They are actively available on Twitter as well. So you can contact them. Moving to the next is a talk on basically optimizing Nuxt.js. And this is from Tarun. Tarun is part of Surat, Vue Surat. So Tarun, you can go ahead from here.
Thank you, Nimit, for introduction. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, so let's start. So today's my session is basically on optimization part, right? So as like you all guys know that as we grow in JavaScript community, so main question that comes in our mind is like the speed, like as the website grows, the main concern for us is how to optimize that, right? So we are already using different frameworks and different libraries, right? But when it comes to optimization, so it's a bit tricky, right? Because we have to go to in-depth documentation and stuff, right? So today I'm going to talk about optimizing my own experience and my own journey through how we optimize our own website. And myself, I'm Tarun Mangukiya. I'm co-founder and CTO of Icon Scout. Icon Scout is basically design resources marketplace for icons, illustration, and stock photos. And we have built this whole website in Vue.js and Laravel. So we do have like more than 2 million pages indexed on Google, right? So we are we have to optimize this. Like earlier we had a page speed score of 40, and now we are at around 86, and we are also planning to optimize this further, right? So I'll be sharing my experience of how we came from how we optimize from 40 to around 80 or 90 up to 90, right? So my social handle is Tarun Mangukiya. You can reach me on Twitter or anywhere, and I'll share this thing at the end also. Right. So as I told you, today's session is basically on optimization, and we'll talk about the things we'll cover is why one should focus on the speed and performance. Second thing is why, as we are in Vue.js, right? So usually we should talk about Vue.js, right? Obviously, Nuxt is a framework built on Vue.js, right? So I usually prefer Nuxt over Vue, right? So we go into why one should use Nuxt rather than pure Vue. Then we'll talk about what can be the tools that you can use to detect the issues or to rectify the issues that you can have with your website. Right? Then there are a bunch of optimization that can be useful, or some of the tricks that can be useful, like changing some of the HTML code or CSS code or tricks, which can be useful for speed. Then we'll go about JavaScript code optimization, the core part of what we love, right? So that this will include majority of code changes. So mostly this is something when I start performing. So it's like 100 to 200 files changes at a time for one optimization, right? And then we'll have some other optimization techniques that can be used, right? So let's start the session. Our main question is why one should optimize, right? So as I'm coming from e-commerce background, so I do know that SEO is one of the major aspects that we focus on, right? And apart from that, not just SEO, not just SEO, but yeah, in terms of user experience also, right? So what users want is they want the website to be loaded under some time, right? So what happens when you open up some website on your mobile or your laptop, right? So you won't be waiting for n number of seconds, let's say 10 or 15 seconds. Right? If the website doesn't still load, right? So you will just close it out, right? So on the right hand side, I have given the chart which shows how many number of seconds that user waits for to load a website, right? So ideally, as per chart, we can see that user can wait around 6 to 10 seconds max, right, to load a website. But when you'll go on, when you'll check most of websites, so you'll find it out that majority of website falls around 7 to 8 seconds or more than that to load a full site, right? So that is something that is the reason that we should focus on optimization our platform, right? And apart from that, when you talk about e-commerce perspective, right? So I think many of us are working on some kind of product, right? Which may or may not related to e-commerce, right? We might be selling something online. So as per one of the good, great SEO practitioner, Neil Patel, he says that when you increases your page speed by 1 second, I mean page speed by 1 second, then it results in 7% increment in conversion, right? So if you take your page speed from, let's say, 10 to 9, right? So it can increase. There are the chances that your conversion will increase by 7%, right? So there are two things. One is obviously user frustration. Another thing is directly related to business. Third thing that usually I tell developers is that as a developer we love to play with many number of files, right? So we can also take this as a challenge to improve our page speed and let's say take it to 80 or 90 or even 95 with the optimization, right? So let's dive into why Nuxt.js and not Vue.js, right? So Vue.js is basically a library, right, which provides template compilation and reactivity for our HTML, right? And while we talk about Nuxt.js, right, so what Nuxt.js gives us is that it's a full framework, right, using which you can build a whole website from scratch, right? So what happens that when you create a website, you'll need a view plus some kind of routing, right, which defines, let's say, my about page, my contact page, and n number of pages, right? Then you might have you might need some of the data where you want to store global your variables, right? For example, let's say whether user wants a grid view for their search, or let's say user wants other setting for any other thing, right? So that is something that is inbuilt. View router, and view store, that is inbuilt in the Nuxt.js, and that is optimized, right? So what Nuxt.js has given that they have created this full set of full framework which is optimized by default, right? So what happens even when you check the page speed of Vue or versus Nuxt on with Google page speed, so both of them are around 98 to 100. Right, so there is no issue or any more load due to Vue router or Vuex or due to Nuxt.js. Right? So we can certainly use Nuxt.js that gives us high speed to us and also our users, right? And obviously that is optimized by default, right? So let's say if you have 100 pages, right? So with Vue.js or by default Vue.js, you will have to write extra code or you will have to do manual work to optimize those 100 pages, even if they are static pages, right? But when you create 100 pages with Nuxt.js, so they'll have inbuilt optimal route level lazy loading enabled, right? So that's already there in Nuxt.js. Plus, one more thing that when I started working on Vue.js was like how to create my directory structure, right? So I was always confused about where should I put what, right? So Nuxt.js provides us this project structure, right, in which we can decide on the pages, the components, the plugins, right? So it's really easy to navigate via our directories, and it gives us proper structure for our coding, right? And yes, one more thing is Vue.js doesn't have SSRP rendering inbuilt, obviously, because that's a library, right? But Nuxt.js can give, Nuxt.js gives us a facility of switching between SSR or rendering, pre-render or pages, or let's say even creating a single page application easy, right? So that's just one line of change, and your application will be switched from SSR friendly to let's say single page web application, right? So that is something that we do have a lot of advantages on Nuxt.js that's compared to Vue.js. So usually what I do is I just create a Nuxt.js project, and that's already optimized, right? And after that, what comes is that once we build up more, add up more and more packages, let's say Axios, then and more and number of more packages, let's say Infinite Scroll, then some kind of other libraries, right? So that adds up more and more, or even Nuxt modules that we have in Nuxt.js, right? So that adds up, that decreases the space speed step by step, right? So here we'll be talking about from the next slides, we'll be talking about the tools that we can use to identify the speed and performance, right? So first tool that I'm using, obviously, or that I use regularly is Google PageSpeed, right? Because most of our traffic might be coming from Google, right? So what we need is we can go. There is a tool called Google PageSpeed Insights, right? Which you guys can use to check your page speed, or they do have different matrices, right? They do have first loading time, then JavaScript execution time, then image loading time, then other third-party loading time, like third-party library loading time. Then they do also check for compression and other number of stuff, right? So what you can do is whenever you make a change on your website, you can always go to. It's recommended that you go to Google PageSpeed Insights and check your just enter your link over there, and they'll give you a number of points that you can optimize for it, right? And this is one of the best tools that you can use for optimization of site. This will work for I would say more than 70 to 80% site. This will work, right? Because many of us are creating static websites, right? So this Google PageSpeed will give you all the insights that's necessary to optimize our basic stuff like resizing the images and reducing the server speed and stuff, right? So we can always go to Google PageSpeed and check our continuously checking the page speeds as we add more number of libraries, right? And also there are many other points given in PageSpeed which is related to SEO, but yeah, we can discuss that later. Right. One more tool that I use is, so the thing is, what happens with the problem with page speed, or the one more thing that I needed was usually we are loading third-party libraries, right? For example, Facebook ads or Google ads or any other library, right? Or let's say Google Analytics, right? So what happens that sometimes those libraries can also cause delay in loading, right? So what happens on an average, we might have 2 to 5, minimum 2 to 5 analytics library that we have added, right? So what we need is we need to know the flow, right? So whenever you go to Google Chrome Dev Tools, right? So you'll see in network tab, you will see the flow of your website being loaded, right? So what we need is we can also look at the flow that's being, the flow at which our website is loading different JavaScript files for different other libraries, right? So that based on that, we can also optimize our site, right? For example, if we see that Facebook is loading, let's say, taking around 500 or 600 milliseconds, right? So we can load them after a second or 2 seconds, or we can, even if we don't need, we can remove those libraries, right? So what the tool is called GT Metrics, and what you can do is you can go to GT Metrics. They'll show you this whole waterfall model of our network request, and you can just scroll up in the page, and you'll see that which file is being called after which file, right? So what I usually do is I just look at the flow, and I find that, hey, this is some library that's not being used, or maybe that's something we tried earlier and we don't need it anymore, right? So that is something we can remove it, or we can also improve. Let's say in the screenshot you see, you can see that there are, let's say, after loading 5 to 6 JavaScript files, there are more than 25 images being loaded, right? But usually we don't see 125 images on the first screen, right? So that is something we can optimize for, like we can lazy load or stuff like that, right? So we can think about, like, so from the GT matrix, you can see that on the first request itself, there are 25 or 30 requests to the image server or to the image endpoint, right? And we can remove those or lazy load those or we can just find out that, hey, this is something that we need to optimize for, right? So first tool was Google PageSpeed Insights that will be useful for most of our use cases. Then GTmetrix can be helpful to analyze the waterfall or the cycle of network request, right? After that, yes, Webpack Bundle Analyzer, right? So Webpack has this plugin called Bundle Analyzer, right? So what it gives is, it gives us the tree of or import tree basically, right? So what we have in Vue.js, we have one main.js file, right, or app.js file in which we are importing all our router, Vuex, Vue store, then n number of modules, then the pages that we are using, right, in the router, right? So it causes a full tree to be created for JavaScript tree, right? So what Webpack Bundle Analyzer shows is that it shows us like how many JavaScript files will be created when you build this project, right? And which JavaScript file contains which of your library. For example, in the screenshot you see on the left, right? So I have installed a package called Bootstrap Vue, right? So my vendor.js file, the main package vendor file that contains Bootstrap. Then there is also a large number of CSS, Bootstrap CSS. Then on the right hand side we have Vue Carousel is also there. Then I do have Popper library, which is for tooltips and stuff, right? Then you might have, let's say, Moment.js. Then you might have, let's say, any other library, right? Infinite scroll and stuff, right? So what we can see is there is just one JavaScript which has all the packages being added to that single JavaScript file, right? So based on Webpack Analyzer, what we can look into is that we can differentiate, hey, the Vue carousel is there, right, in the main vendor file, but we don't need this in main vendor file. What we need is it's just there for homepage, right? So we can just look into this analyzer graph, and we can remove, or we can use the other techniques that I'll show you later on to optimize this thing, right? So Webpack and continuous, what we need to do is, after each iteration that we do, we'll just look at the this bundle analyzer graph, and we'll say that, okay, this library has been removed from main vendor, right? So what our goal should be is to have first load time. We should decrease the first load time, so, right? So what we can do is we can decrease the file size of our main.js and vendor.js, right? So to decrease the vendor.js, we can look into a bundle analyzer and then decide on which is the library that we don't need globally across the project, right? Which is just page level, or let's say even component level libraries that's being used, right? And yes, one more thing is concept called code coverage, right? So what happens is that whenever you create a site, so even we use Bootstrap mostly, or let's say a Tailwind CSS, right? So what happens is that we have 2000 lines of file, right? But usually the thing is, more than 50% of this code is not being executed, even that's a CSS or a JavaScript, right? So using, there is a feature called code coverage is Chrome DevTools, using which we can decide on that how many portion of our code that's been loaded on the page by some kind of JS, but it's not being used or it's not being executed right now, right? So, for example, in a screenshot, there are 5 to 6 files shown, right? And as you can see, 87% code is not being used, the red portion, or 67% code is not being used, or 87, 85, or 66. Right? So, whenever you can, go to any website and you can check this out, that for the majority of site, more than 50% of code is not being used, right? And when you create, let's say, even simple website, so usually I see that around 70 to 80% code is not needed for the first page to be loaded, right? So what we can do is we can go to this, we can even individually select these files, and they'll show us the files in green and red zones, that hey, this is the red zone and that's not being used on the page. So we can maybe remove that code, or maybe move that code to different file or something like that, right? So code coverage can be a very useful feature from Chrome DevTools itself, using which I have optimized my CSS files, and also some of the JavaScript files that wasn't needed for many of my landing pages, right? So using code coverage, basically you can remove the unused code from your page or website. right? So these were the tools that we have used, and let's go to this simple techniques that you can use in HTML or CSS to speed up your site, right? So I think some of them I think you already know. For example, we should always lazy load images, right? So what does lazy loading images means is that whenever you open up any website, you'll see that you won't be able to see the whole page, right? So it might be 5-fold or 6-fold page, right? So what we need to do is we need to make sure that only first fold, the first slider should load at first, right? And when as user scrolls, even in Google Images, you might have seen that when you scroll, the Google will load more images, right? So you should always, so the lazy loading is basically only loading the images that's available on the screen, right? And as user scrolls, it will be loaded on demand, right? So from Chrome, I think 78 plus, we have this by default attribute called loading is equal to lazy, which you can add to your all the images. And what will this do is Chrome will by default, all the WebKit based browser, they'll just load the images that's needed for the screen to be rendered, right? And below the fold images will be loaded once the user scrolls to the page, right? Then yes, there are also you can also refactor your CSS, right? For example, usually we use Bootstrap or Tailwind CSS, right? So what we need to do is we need to make our main CSS or SCSS file as small as possible, right? So what we can do is we can move this SCSS files to our component level, right? So let's say I have a card component, right, which is being used in dashboard only, but that's not there on the home page, right? So what I can do is I can just comment out that in Bootstrap SCSS file and just import that specific component, specific SCSS file in my components, right? So this will speed up or this will decrease my CSS size drastically, right? Then yes, this is the third technique that I use is this is only applicable to listing views, right? So what we do is we have when in e-commerce site or when we have a listing page, right? So we have hover actions or the actions which are accessible only on click, right? So what we can do is on the listing page specifically, we can use VIF or VLs when user hovers that component, and we can lazy load those components or add those HTML portion on dynamically or on the fly, right? So what this will do is this will when you are using your site on SSR mode, so this will decrease our initial page size, right? So initial page size may be 150 KB, or that's being loaded on the first request, right? When we are opening our home page or any other page, right? So we have a specific 100 KB, 200 KB, 300 KB of SSR rendered HTML, right? So that is something we can decrease drastically by if that's a listing page mostly, right? So what we can do is we can remove those hover actions from CSS to VFLs, right? So whenever user hovers, and we can add an event called hover and blur, stuff like that. And then those HTML code will be loaded dynamically, right? So these are three techniques that I usually use for optimization: HTML, CSS, and sometimes yes, the pre-rendered or SSR CSS code, SSR HTML code. Right. After that, yes, this is the main portion of our optimization, that is JavaScript optimization, right? And yes, this one is time taking because you'll need to change many of your files, right? So first option is called dynamic imports, right? So what dynamic import does is that, yeah, as I told you that on the home page, or mostly let's talk about, let's say we have a models. So we have a model for login, we have model for forget password, or we have model for any other offer or stuff like that, right? And those models are basically, many of times those models are being called on click or on some conditions, or let's say a user performs some action, right? So what we can do is we can lazy load these components, right? So what this will do is it is simple syntax, right? So as we import, as we use a syntax called import, like let's say import a model login from some my path, right? So we can just convert it to const model loading, and this is called basically webpack lazy loading, right? So what you can do is you can lazy load this models or even preload this model if needed right? And what this will do is when user clicks on the specific button, the model JavaScript will be called, right? So what will this do is this will, as I told you, we have a larger vendor file, right? But we can also have a main.js file that is main source code of our application, right? So this will remove some of the bytes from your main application files and will be called whenever user clicks on this specific action, right? Sometimes also what I do is I usually put a timeout of 2 to 3 seconds on mounted, and lazy load this login model or sign up model, right? So that is also something that saves my initial main.js file bytes, right? And ultimately this will speed up the our site, right? And where dynamic imports can be useful in case of Vue.js or native Vue.js or Vue router, we can use this thing with routes and pages, right? So what we can do is we can just convert our import syntax to const syntax, and everything will be as it is, right? So this will be loaded on demand, right? Whenever users performs an action. So that can be applicable for pages or pop-ups or even if else components, right? So what we do usually is when user is logged in, we might want to see some other show user some other component, or when user is logged out, we might want to show user some other component, right? So by in this case also we can use const syntax, and this will load based on the condition we have applied, right? So we have, let's say, if a user logged in, right, then that specific component will only be loaded, and in else part the other component will be loaded on, and both of those components won't be added to your main.js file unless necessary, right? And yes, so this is about the code we are writing as a developer, right? One more thing is regarding library, right? So what we do is to usually the best way to use libraries is that we have all the modules called Nuxt modules, right? So we have Nuxt moment, Nuxt fetch, we have Nuxt bootstrap view and everything. I mean, bootstrap view, that's obviously inbuilt Nuxt, right? We have Lodash, right? We have Nuxt XCOS, right? We have many other Nuxt modules available, right? But the problem with Nuxt modules is that they will be added to your root level, right? So whether you need them on let's say your contact page only, but they will be loaded globally, right? So what we can do is first thing that we have to make sure is that we don't use Nuxt modules as far as possible, right? Obviously, it gives as a developer, it gives us comfort and easiness, but that the code that's added to global level will cause an issue for speed, right? And I think this thing from next part, yeah, this one, right? So I mean, this is from next slide. Yeah, and what you can do is we can use a native library, let's say Vue carousel and stuff, and we can import them in the component we want, right? So let's say we have created a slider component, right? So what we can do is we can load Vue carousel in the slider itself, and then on the homepage only, that specific library will be loaded, right? So let's say in the dashboard only, we are using moment.js to showcase dates, right? So what we have to do is rather than using Nuxt module, we can use moment.js, specifically import that in this components, right? We can use the same thing is applicable for Lodash and many other libraries that we use. That is very specific to the component, right? And that's not being used globally for all the pages or components. Right, so that is something recommended from my end, is that whenever you use any library, so try to import them in component, not as a Nuxt module or a Nuxt plugin, right? And what this will do is this will load the libraries whenever on the page or component, as I told you, right? Yeah, third part is optimizing libraries, right? So there are many libraries that also even Google Chrome dev team has recommended that you can replace, let's say, moment.js. If you don't remember, moment is around more than 150 kb library, right? And even with gzip compression, it's around 20 kb, right? So what we can do is we can replace these larger libraries with the smaller ones, like which are ES5 or ES6 friendly, right? And let's say in the mostly in the date formation, we might just be using a simple format, right? So what we can do is we can replace these libraries with datafns or fetch, that's by GitHub. We can also replace it with unfetch, right? Then there are also other web plugins. For example, one of them is for Lodash is Babel plugin transform import, right? So what you can do is rather than even usually what I recommend is that if you just use specific function from the loaders, right? Let's say short, so only load those file only function, right? You same thing you can do with Bootstrap. You rather than loading them at the global module level, you can import the individual components as you need, right? So this is there are these three things that's how mostly I'm using. And yeah, obviously replacing libraries will be time taking, or even importing the things globally will be time taking, right? So we have to do this. I mean, this will be continuous process, right? And yeah, one more thing is, this is mostly I don't use is you can force Webpack to split up your vendor file. So there is an optimization key in that we have split chunks, right? So in the split chunks we can define minimum size and maximum size of our JavaScript files, and we can Webpack will just take care of this thing. But this is not something that's recommended on the 100%. But yeah, using split chunks, what you can do is for larger libraries which cannot be splitted, right? So what you can do is you can use split chunks, and what this will do is you can basically use HTTP 2.0, right? So in the HTTP 2.0 we have when you it can request multiple files from the server, right? So this will speed up initial loading time of the library, right? So we can use split chunks for larger libraries for also, right? And yeah, after that, we on the other optimizations, this is I'm pretty straightforward. Is that obviously we must have caching headers for our all the side. I mean all the JavaScript files that we are using, right? And this is something you will always get from Google PageSpeed as an input, right? Then one more thing is, if you are specifically, if your app is specifically for the that's a single page application, or let's say a dashboard kind of application, right? So what you can do is you can use service workers, right? So what service worker does is that adds a simple layer of request caching kind of stuff, right? So what with the service worker, what will happen is the whole your site will be cached in the user's browser, right? And then next time whenever user requests the JavaScript files, this will be passed to service workers, and if they have this file already available, then they won't even request the server, right? So service worker are mostly useful for dashboard kind of applications, right? Then we should use some kind of CDN, let's say Cloudflare or CloudFront, always on top of our JavaScript files, right? So this will bring our code base near to the user, right? Near to their location, right? Yeah. And other Nuxt.js optimization that I use is sometimes some of the libraries I just want for client side or server side. For example, I have a feature which reacts based on users browser resizing, window resizing, right? So usually I move those libraries in processor client only, right? So I don't load them on the server side, and this can be useful for SSL purpose, right? So those library won't be loaded on the server side, and this can speed up all the tokenization stuff from server, right? For example, even one of the popular libraries, validation library, right? VueValidate. So what I do is I load VueValidate library on the client side only. I don't load them on server side, right? And yeah, the main thing is about any optimization thing is always repeat, right? So what we do is usually on every 3 months or every 6 months, we just analyze all the things from scratch, and we look into the libraries that we have added. You can also do, if you have a larger team, you can also add this kind of all this page speed, or they do have Lighthouse, right? So there is Puppeteer edition of Lighthouse, which you can use to add to your CI/CD, and every time when you push something to your code, so it will just give you the graph of how your page speed is performing, or even code coverage and stuff, right? So you can add this thing to your all the PRs, and you can even review them before releasing this new update. Right. So what I do is I usually continuously, once we started with optimizing or routing, then components, then other JavaScript methods, then HTML, right? So now we will also go and we'll check continuously, right? So that is it. And yeah, so that's from my end. I'll be happy to have your questions regarding any I mean, you guys have.
I think we can wait a minute for maybe a
For
question.
sure. Yeah, for sure. There is a chat.
Sangeeth here, Tarun.
Hey, hi, Sangeeth.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, since we are talking about code splitting and all those things.
Yes.
Like, when is that point when you start adding those webpack chunk name comments and things like that? Like, if you're talking about Vue.js app development, like how much like can a normal application, a decent application, get away by not doing any of that, just using whatever Vue is providing out of the box? And like, when should they start like?
Yes. So mostly what happens is when we are creating, let's say, one personal website or static single page web application. I mean, it's not technically SPA, but a single page site that is officially a single page, right? Or let's say portfolio site. So in those cases, the optimization won't be needed, right? But when you are creating a dashboard for your users, and you'll have multiple options, right? Sales and any number of options: upload, sales, their transaction, and all your features, right? So what happens is that as you grow, or as you write more code, or as you add more packages to your code base, basically, so this will slow your site down by slowly, I mean continuously, right? So this is not something that will just come up. Like in one of the presentation, I wanted to create a demo of slow application, right? But I wasn't able to, right? Because it's a continuous thing, right? So what we have what happened with us was our pace speed, that was getting low continuously, right? So at the point of, let's say, 40 or 50, we were like, okay, now this is something we need to optimize for, right? And then this is mostly applicable for large scale applications, or an application which are very sensitive to the speed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it may have, let's say, 10 to 15 pages. Then you can start after 10 to 15 pages, you should start optimizing.
And
or let's say you have 5 to 10 libraries. Yeah.
Indeed. And like you mentioned, like I guess we need to keep monitoring our performance and see like what goes past 10, where it has to start. But I guess like we have, like you mentioned, we have like good tooling in the community itself. I mean, within Vue.js, we have things like Nuxt, which already gives a really good performance out of the box. So a lot of the times you don't have to do a lot of those extra optimizations that you were talking about, but of course, like you should keep monitoring and
correct. So even I this is not about Vue, but one of my friend he built an application in 2 months. Obviously they do help product team and stuff. So what happened with them? The first landing page even was downloading around 32 MB of code.
Oh.
And even that was in React, right? So what I did is, the thing is that the actions I told you, right? So majority of them are related to Webpack, right? So these are the basically techniques, or even you can use the same techniques in other platforms, right? So even within an hour, I was able to speed up their site to, like, from 32 MB, I just drilled it down to a 1 MB. Right, and then I told them, hey, now from 1 MB to slower will take more time, right? Because I need to understand the structure of React and stuff. But some of the lazy loading stuff and CDA and then image loading, this can be pretty useful. Correct. Yeah.
Cool.
But this thing takes time, obviously.
Yes.
For me, like, we do have more than 100 pages, right, in the pages folder. Then we have more than 250 component files in component folder in Nuxt.js, right? So for us, it takes a lot of time to, whenever I optimize for even a single library, let's say Moment.js, right? So we have like more than 100 files to be changed. So that requires a lot of testing also.
Definitely. Thanks for that. So we got a question in the
Yeah.
Q&A. I'm not Neha asked the question. So okay. So hello, nice presentation. You mentioned using service workers for optimization. I want to know what was your experience with working with service workers with respect to caching issues.
So mostly I haven't worked actively on service workers because our site is more of SSR friendly, right? But with the service workers, I mean, do you want to know the issues we have faced or the optimization?
So I think she's trying to understand like caching issues with service worker. How are you tackling that? Do you have a strategy for tackling it?
Yeah, so mostly what happens with service worker is that they cache all full side or full side, right? So usually I don't recommend when you are using service worker, then don't push anything to your production directly, right? Always push those things to your testing environment and have proper Q&A and then only push to the production. That's what happened with us multiple times was that, and this is the reason I removed service worker from our own website was that usually whenever we change something and as a developer, it might, break something else, right? So, and in case of service worker, what happens is they'll cache all our application code, right? All the JavaScripts, right? And it will get refreshed on second or third user visit to the site, right? So this can be a bad experience for the users for 2 to 3 times in between, right? And so I don't recommend, service workers until and unless you are very sure of that this code won't break anything else.
All right. So to sum that up, you want to make sure that if you are playing around with service workers, make sure you have a staging environment.
Correct.
Sure you test out your update rollout strategy. If you invalidate your bundles and stuff, I guess you need to make sure it is invalidating, right?
Yes. And one more thing is that you for this service worker is don't cache your index.html. So right, specifically for your / path, that please don't cache this thing. And obviously don't cache your service worker file also. Right. So I think that file may be sw.js or service-worker.js, right? So we have to set cache policy to 0.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I kind of have a point there. Like I think there are certain applications if you really want offline, then
correct.
of course you have to cache it.
Yes, correct.
But again, of course, like we can take an example from some of the websites, Indian websites like Swiggy and all,
yes.
And you see sometimes that they have these reload buttons. That come up. So you can, there are definitely hooks inside service worker where you can listen to see if there's a new one pending. And probably give a notification saying that something new is there. You are ready to reload. But like you said, I think that staging environment point is must, I guess. When you work with something like offline caching, you need to make sure that you're doing it right before you roll it out to production, because the last thing you want is somebody stuck in a older version.
Correct.
And there's a bug that needs to be fixed ASAP.
Correct.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. So those another question from anonymous person. When can we decide if we really need SSR? What's the point when you decide?
I would say SSR will be needed for mostly e-commerce website or the websites that, mostly e-commerce only, which has, let's say, rapidly changing content, right? Plus high number of pages, right? So we have around 2 million pages, so we can't pre-render them. So SSR is a necessary thing in that case, right? And if you can use single page application or even generated pages when you have your when most of your application is after user login, right? So what happens in let's say even in Zoom, right? So we have Zoom is just a single page, or let's say we have 10 pages, right? We can just generate them using Nuxt.js, and our application will be accessible after you log in, right? So you won't need SSR in many of use cases. Until unless you have highly, your marketing guys are like, we'll need a proper SEO, right? Then you might need to go with SSR.
Okay. All right. So one more question was there. What is the best way to format images without losing its quality?
I think mostly, if you are, I think, Cloudflare, they do have paid plan. For I mean, what does it mean by format?
I believe they just want to know like what's the best optimization that you can do for images during your build process, so that you don't lose the quality a lot. Like if you can like reduce the size, like if there are better formats, maybe like there are formats like WebP and all. So maybe
yes, yeah. So one thing is for sure, you can also always generate a WebP images. What we are doing is we are mostly resizing images on the fly. Right, and apart from that, for all of our developers, we have a strategy that whenever your designer or your marketing person gives you an image, always go to tiny PNG first, right? Optimize image over there, and even resize the image according to the size you are using. That's what happens with mostly that I have seen with front end guys, is that they are using image in 200 by 200 size that is of 1000 by 1000 or more than that, right? Because designer have given them, and they are like, we want high quality and stuff. Right. So what we can do is we can always go to tiny PNG and first resize the image and then go to tiny PNG. These are the two things that's necessary. After that, when you have a site which is very dependent for images, right? Let's say e-commerce site. So in that case, you will need a WebP conversion also, right? Because you want the images. I mean, there are 100 or 200 images on the site on the single page even. Right, so that will take time to be loaded. So in that case, further compression is also required. But yeah, more tiny PNG will do a lot of. I mean, even sometimes it can decrease the image size less than the WebP also.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
So I guess that's pretty much it. We are not seeing a lot of other questions. So thanks a lot, Tarun.
Yeah, welcome.
That was a pretty good session, and I hope like we all go back and try to start like looking for performance issues and add some of these pretty easy workarounds that we can start adding and monitoring, so that people get to experience a faster web. So thanks a lot, Nimit. Anything you want to add?
No, I think it's pretty concise talk, and
So once again, like just wanted to remind, like you can keep posting your questions. We'll collect them once this is over, and I guess some of our panelists are also looking at the chats as well. So keep posting them.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out to me or Twitter or even email for anything maybe regarding optimization. Sure. Thank you, Nimit and Sangeeth, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Tarun.
Hope you guys have enjoyed the session.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
so thanks again, Tarun, for your talk. Up next, we have just a little bit shout out to Pune community. So we do have Vue Pune. Recently, they had 2 meetups last year, but I think this year they haven't had meetups this time. But yeah, there's a community in Pune, and if you are around Mumbai or Pune, Mumbai has that community. If you're watching this from Mumbai, then I think there are some JavaScript communities that also support Vue.js. So during our March remote meetup of Vue Bangalore, we met with Bilal. He leads the JavaScript community in Mumbai, and he mentioned that Vue is also discussed in their community. So if you're around Mumbai, then reach out to Bilal. You can search that on Twitter. Moving to next one, we have our last talk of the day, which is Docker for Vue.js developer. It is by co-organizer of Vue Bangalore. And yeah, Sangeeth, I would like you to take it from here.
Thanks, Nimit. Let me... Okay. I'm just going to hope that everything is clear and it's you guys are seeing my slides. So hello, everyone. I'm hoping for this to be a short talk. So let's get started. So I'm going to talk about Docker for Vue.js developers. And I'm pretty sure some of you might have already heard about Docker, in the past. Like it's a buzzword these days. And let's see how we can actually use Docker for some of our front-end workflows. So as Nimit said, I'm Sangeeth. I'm a front-end developer at Flock. I'm a pretty big gamer, I would say. I game on my PlayStation all the time. So if you have a PlayStation, just reach out to me. Let's connect after this. I'm a pretty big otaku as well, pretty big geek and a hardcore Microsoft fan. And I mostly geek out about front-end stuff, but I kind of try to stay updated about all the things happening in the tech sector. So what is Docker and why should you care, right? You're a front-end developer. I mean, you must have heard about this Docker thing, but isn't that a backend thing? So we're going to try to understand like why, where Docker can help us in our development workflow, as well as when we finally deploy it into production. So let's look at a common problem that arises during development pretty much all the time. Like it doesn't matter if you're a front-end developer or a backend developer, but you must have heard about this quite a lot. And you must have said this to other people quite a lot, right? My code doesn't always work, but when it does, it works on my machine. Works on my machine is such a phrase, such a big phrase that's used quite a lot by us developers, and we don't have any shame in using that. But it happens quite a lot, and this case arises because we have like different machines and different configurations, different versions of tooling, and that happens quite a lot of the time. So what is Docker? So I was trying to find out like ways to explain this, and I actually stumbled upon the most perfect meme to describe it. There you go. It works on my machine, then we will ship your machine. And that is how Docker was born. So I think that, summarizes it pretty well. And that's all, folks, I guess. But actually, what is it, right? Like, how is it actually able to do that? Like, how are we able to actually tell that? Like, how can we ship our machine, as the production environment? So what Docker does is actually, it creates an image, what we call as an image. So that image contains your application bundle, which means all your compiled assets. In our front-end developers case, it is all the compiled JavaScript code, the HTML assets, the CSS, the HTML, and so on. So it bundles that along with just the right amount of system APIs and services. Some of the things that your operating system needs, but it's not really critical to the functioning of an operating system. So we have this concept of an OS kernel. So what we really need is to separate that OS kernel from the rest of the stuff that hangs on the top of it. So you can see here this pretty nice architecture diagram. And you can see here that we have on the left side, we have the Docker, the case of running Docker. And on the right side, we can see like how virtual machines work. So virtual machine is another way to bundle your application and deploy it somewhere. But the problem with virtual machine is that you're actually not only just copying your application code, but you're also shipping the entire operating system. So that is wasteful in quite a lot of the cases. Like you don't really need to ship that operating system again and again. You don't need to bundle the entire operating system along with your application. So what Docker allows us to do is just ship your application, and like just the right amount of system APIs that are required for it to work. But the operating system actually kind of stays the same across the bunch of applications that you're going to deploy. So that is what Docker does. So you kind of get a lightweight bundle in the end. The image is going to be pretty small. It's not going to be like 5 gigabytes and stuff like that. It's going to be like in the order of megabytes. So that is pretty cool. So the advantages of this approach is that it's lightweight, right? Only very few system resources are required for this to function. We have a faster deployment cycle because it's pretty easy to swap out an old container image with a new one. So we have this concept of containers. Maybe I didn't really explain that. So container is again this bundle, the running instance, the bundle that is going to finally run with our application code. So it's easy to swap out like our old image like with a new one that we are going to build, and we can build these images pretty fast. And we can also run these images on top of a service called an orchestrator. One example of an orchestrator is Kubernetes. And this allows us to rapidly scale up. Like I suddenly have a growth in the customers who are trying to visit my website. And I can actually rapidly scale up and meet the demand without having to do much work myself. I don't have to write all the scripts to do that. Kubernetes kind of helps it to do that. And it allows us to run these multiple containers, multiple instances of our application at the same time. And we have a quick failover rate. So we can even do stuff like this. We can even put Docker inside Docker, which is another crazy thing. If you're ever going to go down this path, then I guess you're going to discover a lot of this crazy stuff. So all that is cool, but why should you use Docker, right? Some of you might be thinking, hey, like, no thanks. Like there are things like Netlify. Why would I use that? Like I'll just use Netlify. And sure, Netlify is freaking awesome. And we all know like how amazing it is to run things out of Netlify. It's pretty easy to do it. But what Netlify actually uses under the hood are Docker containers. You can actually go to this particular GitHub repo to understand like how they are actually creating the build, creating the image for your applications under the hood. They're actually creating containers behind the scenes. It's just that these are all abstracted away for you. So sure, like you can use Netlify. It's a pretty great service, but Netlify is actually powered by containers. So why not like really understand like what is happening? So like when do you use it? So Netlify and other services exist, but there are times we can't really use stuff like Netlify because of corporate policies and stuff like that. And sometimes you need more flexibility. You need to probably deploy your server side your backend application as well as along with your front end application. And Netlify is pretty limited in what you can actually do. Or sometimes you need on-premises deployment. You can't really put things on the cloud. You need to really put it on some customer's company on a physical location. And so containers are going to make your lives a whole lot easier if the above points fit your bill. But the most exciting bit, I think, is that you can actually use Docker for development. Okay. So how do I get started? So I'm gonna try to start soon. There's a few more stuff you need to understand. So we'll split the use of Docker for two purposes. One, we'll see Docker for development versus Docker for protection. So I'm going to try and like show you Docker for development right now. And maybe if we still have time, talk about Docker for protection. So the things you need, first thing is that you need to install this application called Docker Desktop. It is available for Mac, Windows, Linux, and this allows you to run containers on your machine. We're going to create a file called Docker file. So this Docker file is going to describe like how to build this image, this Docker image. We're going to explain images a little bit more. And there's a thing called Docker Ignore, which we are going to take a look at. And finally, like any place that supports Docker, which can be like a on-premises installation. There are quite a lot of providers for that, or it can be AWS, GCP, Heroku. So again, like if I'm not sure if I'll be able to show off a Heroku deployment, but we'll give it a shot. So these are the three main things that you need to understand. The first thing that we are going to do is create a Docker file. So this Docker file is again a bunch of instructions that tell the Docker engine how to build your image. Now this Docker file is passed on to the Docker engine, which is going to actually parse it and build the image for us. So we'll get the output of this stage will be a Docker image. And finally, this Docker image is going to be instantiated. So it's going to actually, run in the memory, and it's going to be available. It's basically like executing a program, So, and that will result in a Docker container. So we call Docker container something that usually runs that is actually currently running right now. So Docker file, which is like, you can think of it like source code, Docker image, like the compiled output, and Docker container is like the running instance of the program. Okay. So demo time. Let's hope this works. So I'm going to open my terminal here. Okay. And I'm going to go back. Let's see, laptop. So this is going to be a live demo. Let's see if things are going to work. So first we need a Vue.js application, right? So we are all here for Vue.js. So let's create one. So you create dot, the easiest way to create a Vue.js application. Yes. And I'm gonna pick a couple of presets here. But you can pick anything. It doesn't really matter. The point of this one is not specifically to show off any Vue.js related things, but Docker can work on pretty much anything. So this will take a few moments. So in the meantime, I just want to show off. So we have Docker for desktop running here. So once you install it, you will get this on Mac and Windows. Like you will see this, which indicates that Docker is actually running. So it needs to be running in order to execute the commands that we are going to execute. So once you install it, make sure that it is actually running. Otherwise, the commands won't work. So it's installing the dependencies. This step is again not necessary since we are going to be running everything inside Docker ultimately, but we'll see. Okay, so we have a Vue.js application, which is all cool. Let's just see if it works. So it's starting a development server. It's going to do, it's going to build the application for development. And when we open Chrome, we get, give me a second. And that's it. Pretty neat. Cool. So we haven't done any Docker stuff right now. So I'm going to open this in Visual Studio Code, but again, it doesn't really matter where you open it. Like I just personally use Visual Studio Code. That's all. Okay, so that's it. So we need to convert this repository into a Docker image, basically, that we can use to run our Docker container. So I'm going to create the file. It's conventionally called Docker file. It doesn't have to, but this is the default file that Docker is going to search for. I also have the Docker for Visual Studio Code extension installed, which is a pretty nice extension. Like it will give you a lot of overview without having to run a lot of the commands. So if you're not a command person, then you can use this extension to get a lot of the insights. And it also gives you all the commands right here. So if I want to build, then I have the command right here. Cool. So let's see. So the first thing we need is a base image. Okay, so we are not going to like write an operating system from scratch. I don't have that talent. So we are going to use an existing image, and there are quite a lot of them. If you search for Docker Hub, this is like the NPM for Docker. So you can find a lot of open images in Docker Hub. So let's see, we want Node.js. So if I search for Node, and I can find that there is a Node.js image repository, and I can find a lot of different versions of Node.js that I can use in my application as the base image. Okay, so you can search for a lot of other things. Databases are available, different types of operating systems are available, and so on. So I'm going to use Node.js as my base image. So for that, we're going to specify an instruction called from. So already you can see that Visual Studio is helping me by showing me like what I can put next. So I'm going to use from node. Okay, and then I'll put this colon to indicate like which version of node I want. So I'm going to say 12.16.0 hyphen buster. So this buster part in the end is actually the type of the operating system that we are going to need. So you can see here that all the available versions available. So these are called tags in Docker speak. So you can find a lot of these tags, and you can see that for the same version, there are like different things: Alpine, Buster, Stretch. So these all refer to like different types of base operating system for Node.js itself. So Alpine is like the least size of them all. So if you really want the production build, you should use Alpine. But since we are using it for development, we'll use something like Buster, which is a stable Debian build. So we're going to use Buster. So again, from command, the name of the image, the tag for the image separated by the colon. So that's it. That's simple. Okay. So next we need to tell that what files we need to give it some files, right? We need to pass the files that we have in our as our source code. We need to pass it on to the running container. So when we are building this image, we need to tell that what files should be copied over to the container image. So for that, I can use the instruction called copy. So that's again pretty simple. So you can find that all these Dockerfile instructions are pretty straightforward. They don't really, they're not really complicated. They're pretty straightforward. So the syntax for this is copy space the location on your machine, okay, and then the location on container. That's what you need to specify. So first we need to specify a path relative to our machine, something in our machine, and then we need to copy it to somewhere within our container image. So our machine has a file system. The container also will be having a separate file system. So we need to tell what file should be moved over there. Right now I'm going to do this. So this basically indicates copy whatever is in my current directory in my local machine to the container itself. Okay, but again, like where inside the container, right? So for that, we have another instruction to set like a working directory for all the things that we are going to do from now on. So I'm going to say that my working directory is going to be /app root, right inside the root, and a folder called app. That's what my working directory is going to be. So when I do this copy dot space dot, all the files in my current directory is going to be copied into the app directory. So that's it. That's pretty straightforward. Okay, that's cool. What do we do next? So remember, we're trying to build a development version, right? So for that, again, like we can run. So the next thing, the logical thing should be that we need to do is run yarn install or npm install if you are using npm. So since I'm using yarn, I can do run. So run is another instruction. Run tells what command to run. So you can specify any command that should be run here. So I'll do run space yarn or yarn install. I mean, you don't have to do the install part. You can just say yarn. Okay, so that will install all the npm dependencies that we have. And finally, the final thing that we need to do is serve our application, right? For that, the command is yarn space serve. So this is the final command. Like this is the thing that the container is actually supposed to run. All these blocks are basically telling how to build the image itself. But ultimately, we want to tell the image that what command should be run when the container is started. So for that, we'll use the cmd instruction, and we're going to say that yarn serve. So again, what's the difference between run and cmd? Run is basically any arbitrary command that you want to execute. So you can put I can put multiple runs here. So I have a build step. I can do yarn build. I want to copy something to somewhere else. I can do that. It doesn't really matter. I can put multiple run commands. But the cmd is special. CMD, there can only be one cmd command, and cmd indicates what is the final command that should be run in order to start the application. So in our case, the final command that is run to start the development server is yarn serve. So we're going to specify that. Okay. So let me go ahead. Okay. So I think we have a decent, Docker file setup. So let's try to run this. Okay. So to run that, make sure, like I said, the Docker is running. Okay. If everything is good here, if it is green here, then you're good to go. So I'm going to basically run docker build -t VueBLR app. Okay, let's just dissect this for a moment. So Docker is basically the command line tool that we're going to use for a lot of things. So right now we want to build the image. So for that, we have the build subcommand. So Docker build, and then we need to give the image a name. So like I said, you need to give the image a name or a tag. So that's what this -t is for. So we're going to tell, okay, give it a tag of VueBLR -app. And we're going to tell that Okay, so where can I find a Docker file? That's the next question. And what directory should I use for doing all this build process? So for that, we are going to specify the current directory. This is what, so that's why we have a dot here. Okay, so it's usually dot in most of the cases, since we are always going to be inside the directory where we are going to be working in. So I'm going to run this. So what this is going to do, as you can see, is first send all the things inside here to Docker. Now you can already notice one problem here, which is that we are actually sending the node modules as well into the Docker daemon. Okay, so it's actually copying a lot of things. Okay, so maybe I'll just quit this for now. Okay, because I want to just talk about one more file which is useful, which is called docker ignore. So it should be dot docker ignore. So if you know about git ignore, it's pretty similar. It's pretty much the same thing. It's not exactly the same, but it's quite similar. So in docker ignore, we can specify the files or directories that we don't want to be a part of the built image. So I'm going to tell that, okay, you should ignore anything inside the git folder, and also anything inside our modules, and also anything inside our disk folder, which is usually the directory, the default directory that Vue uses. So we're going to specify these things because we don't want them to be transferred over, because that's unnecessary, because we are anyway going to do a yarn install right here. Okay, so once again, I'll run the docker build command. Okay, now you can see that only 474.6 KB was transferred. So that's quite small. And you can already see that Docker is at work, right? It's actually going to pull this image. So if you don't have this image on your machine already, then it is actually going to download it. Then it's going to work through each and every instruction. So it is seeing all these instructions here. It is copying all the files. Now it is actually running the yarn install step. So again, this is going to take a small time. So quick thing I want to point out here is that you can see all these hashes here. So what Docker is actually doing it is that at almost every step of this Docker file, it is actually caching whatever has been built so far. So it is actually having multiple intermediate containers. You can see here that removing intermediate containers. So it is actually going to create and remove these intermediate containers based on whether these lines changed. So it is actually caching these layers. So when you have more and more instructions, and if you wrote your Docker file properly, then it is actually able to cache those results, and your subsequent builds will be faster. So it's not always going to take this much time if you haven't changed that much. So we will see where as we proceed. Let's see. So now it is progressing a little bit more. Okay, yarn install has finished. Oh, okay. So I think the yarn build is finished. Okay, scared me for a bit. Okay, so CMD answer. Okay, so you can notice that nothing happened at this stage because, like I said, CMD is only meant for when you actually start the instantiate the Docker image into a Docker container. So it's not actually running anything right now because it's just an instruction telling that, okay, when you start the Docker container, run this command called yarn serve. Okay, so now we need to run this image that we built. So how do I see it? How do I see like the images that I have in my machine? So if I want to see the images, I can do docker space images. Okay, and you can see I have quite a lot of images, but you can see that the recently built image is here on the top, VueBLR-app 36 seconds ago. Okay, and this is quite big right now because, like I said, I'm using Buster, which is a Debian build, I guess. And Debian is quite easier to debug actually. And when you're actually going for production, you can replace it with something like Alpine, which is significantly smaller. Okay, so now that that is done, we need to run the image that we just built. We need to create a container. So for that, we use docker space run. Okay. And then we specify these two things called -it. Just again, like go with the flow for now. We'll try to explain this. What is this int later? And then I'm going to mention that, okay, now I need to tell that, okay, which port to run it. Okay, let's forget that for a moment. So I'm going to do VueBLR-app. Okay, so I have docker run -it and the name of the image that I just built. Okay, so that's going to start, and you can see that already it feels like as if we are running this command directly in my Mac terminal, but it is not. It is actually creating that container, and it is actually running this command inside the container. But you can see that all these things are working, right? Like all these terminal features and stuff, like erasing the old output and getting the new output, everything seems to just work, right? And we finally get this localhost 8080. So everything should be good, right now. Let's try to open this. Oops, it's not working. Why is it not working? So remember that we are running all these things inside the container, and the container is its own world. It has its own file system. It has its own networking stack. So we can't directly access whatever is running inside the container from the host machine. They are quite isolated. So we need to tell the container to actually expose some of the things that it holds to the outer world, which is the host machine. So in this case, I want to expose this port 8080. So Vue.js by default is running on 8080. So I need to tell Docker to expose this port 8080 to the outside world. Outside world meaning my host machine. So I'm going to kill it. To kill, you can just press Ctrl+C. That's going to stop the container as well. Okay, so once again, it is docker run, but I will pass this parameter called -p. So -p. So -p, I need to first specify the port at which I want to see this page in my machine. Okay, so for now, I want to see it at 8080 itself. Okay, and then I put a colon, and then I specify which port inside the container is this web service running. So we just saw that it is running inside the container on 8080 itself. So it's 8080:8080. Okay, so this left side of 8080 is the port that I want to see on my host machine. And the right side is basically the port on which the service is running inside the container. So that's something that you need to remember. It's host port : container port. So I'm going to run this again. So again, it's going to start the development server. Okay, now let's try visiting this, and you can see that we're actually seeing our website. That's cool. That's awesome. But so far we haven't achieved anything new, but we created a container image, and we managed to run the container, and we managed to expose the port inside the container so that we can see the website here. Now let me try editing something, right? I mean, after all, on development build, I should be having hot reloading and all that good stuff, right? So let me come here and let me just add a paragraph right here. Hello from Docker the bag. And I save this. You can immediately see that nothing really happened here, because it usually actually gives you a message saying that, okay, I'm recompiling, and it's going to flash this message again, but that didn't really happen. So when I go back here and reload it, nothing happened, like my content is not here. So why is that? Well, remember that we actually copied all our files. We are actually copying it. We are not actually telling Docker to actually, use the files on my machine. Like I said, Docker is going to create its own file system. So we are actually copying all the files from our file system to Docker file system. So it doesn't have any link whatsoever back to the files here. So it has its own set of copies for all these files, and it's going to use that. So when we make any changes here, it's not going to get reflected. Why? Because that's a different copy. So what we really want in this case is to actually have a way for the container to be able to listen, to be able to share a part of the file system. that belongs to the host being my Mac machine. So it should be able to actually share, we should be able to share this particular directory, live talk, to somewhere inside the container so that they both point to the exact same file system. So we can actually do that with Docker again. So for that, what we need to do is to this Docker run command, we need to pass an option called -v. V stands for volume. So this is another command that we can use to basically share some part of our host file system with that of the container file system so that they are identical. And in this case, we need that because we need to make changes on the go and we need to see it reload. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say -v, and I'm going to use this environment variable called pwd. So pw is okay. So pwd is going to give us the current working directory, which is live talk, right? So we can't unfortunately use -v /. I'm not sure why, but it's not supported right now. So we need to do $pwd. So again, this is host is coming first and then colon somewhere inside the container. So a path inside the container. We want to map this live talk directory to a path inside the container, which is going to be /app, because that is my working directory. That's where the server is actually running right now. So I want to do this, right? Okay. So I want to do one more thing. So sometimes I might have node modules inside my Mac because I'm locally developing, and sometimes I'm switching between Mac and Docker development. So in that case, it's going to be a problem when like it has to like choose like which node modules to use, the one inside the container, the one in the Mac. Like that's going to usually cause some issues. So what we can also tell, one more v command we can pass, and we can tell that /app node modules. So what this is going to do is, for that path inside the container at /app node modules, it's going to create a separate volume, which is different from whatever is happening here. So again, this is just a minute thing that you need to remember, and things should work after this. So let's try this, right? Okay, once again, everything is starting. It's actually building everything. We should be able to see if this is going to get the new text that we inserted. Then we made some progress. Oh, you can see that we're getting hello from Docker. Okay, that's cool. That's a good sign. But we need to see if live reloading is actually working, because like I said, if you're giving the -v command, the file system is going to be shared into the container image, right? So we should be able to edit these files. Okay, I'm going to save that. Now you can see that already compilation is happening, and voila, we're getting live reloading. Okay, so that's cool. So now we can actually see how we can use Docker for development. It is pretty simple, right? The Docker file that you have to write is pretty straightforward, and you just need to be familiar with the Docker build and Docker run command. So amuse me for a second, like why do I need to do this, right? Like why am I having to do this? How is it going to help me? So well, imagine if you have a team of people who are working on, some of them are working on a Mac, some of them are working on a Windows machine, some of them are working on, I don't know, Linux, right? So when you want to run a Vue.js application, it's pretty simple comparatively, but it still requires a few things, right? You need to make sure that the Node.js version in your system is actually matching the supported version for the Vue-CLI or the Vue-CLI tooling that is inside that is installed once you create the Vue application. And also you need to make sure that your operating system doesn't have some kind of weird versions of modules installed that might be required by something else. So sometimes it happens that it works on one person's machine, but it doesn't work on some other person's machine, even though they both have the exact same Mac or exact same Windows machine. So that kind of happens quite a lot of the time. But imagine if you did this, if you simply added this Docker file, then you can pretty much tell anyone who is going to join your team to basically run Docker build and run Docker run. That's all. And you can even add these in package.json, as Docker build and Docker run. So they don't even have to remember the exact commands that they need to run. All they need to do is install Docker and just run yarn Docker build followed by yarn Docker run. That's all. And Docker build you only have to do once, right? So that is a pretty step up, in speed that you can achieve, when you're trying to develop. And you don't really have to bother like how fast you can onboard a new user, because they just need to run these two commands. That's it. They don't really need to know which version of Node.js they have to install or Vue.CLI they need to install. All of that is removed from the equation. So I think that's a pretty powerful reason why this is going to really transform your development workflows if you started using it. And in this case, Vue.js is a pretty simple application, but imagine you had your Vue.js application inside a Spring Boot application, so if you had a setup like that, then you can imagine it's going to be even more complex to get that project running. Whereas if you put all of that inside this Docker file and have this easy to access setup, then everybody in the team can actually just run the Docker command and start development. So they don't have to worry about the tooling. They don't have to worry about the versions. And that's pretty powerful. So I hope I managed to, tell you, share with you the pros of having a Docker configuration setup for your development. It's good to have. It's definitely not necessary. You can still develop in the old way, but it's good to have it so that somebody new can actually get started very quickly. So I'm just going to quickly run through this. So we saw Docker file, and it has only about 20 instructions. And we saw already the from command, the working directory command, the copy command, the run command, and cmd command. These are pretty much the basic set of commands that you need to get started. And this image tag name format is something that you can remember. So it is usually like this, where like you specify the name of the app, which is like in this case like VueBLR-app. And then I put a colon, and then I specify like a version name or a tag specifier like latest. So latest is always going to point to the latest image of my particular thing. So one thing I kind of skipped during my demo is that I didn't give any versions for my build images, but you should always provide a version, especially if you're deploying it to production. You should always make sure that you are increasing the version. So the port mapping as well. This is one thing that confused me quite a lot. I think it still confuses me, but it goes like this. The host port, basically the port on your machine, and container port is the port inside the container. So whatever service is running inside your container, it might be exposing some port. So that is the container port. So you need to do this mapping in order to access it from your local machine. Okay, so let's take a quick look at some Docker CLI CRUD. You can view all the containers that you have using Docker Container LS. You can see all the images that you have inside by using either Docker images or Docker image LS. Docker top is going to show you all the processes running inside the container. So this is a cool command. If you're checking out Docker, just try to run this command and see all the things that are going on inside the container. Docker run is going to allow us to run a container from an image that we created. Docker build is going to allow us to create the image. Docker exec is another command. So if we have a running container, we can execute some other command inside the container, even when it is already running. So Docker stop is going to stop the container gracefully, like it will try to like send the, I forgot the name of the commands, but I forgot the name of the signal, SIGINT maybe. And Docker kill is basically going to forcefully kill the container. Again, just removing, if you want to remove all the images, because these images actually take up quite a lot of size, you can use Docker image prune or Docker container prune to remove all the unwanted stuff, when you're playing around with Docker. So some tips, make sure you include a Docker ignore file, and you add directories like git, node modules, your distribution directory like dist or build. Make sure you install your dependencies first in order. So this is something that I can't cover with the time slot we have, but if you look around, there are certain ways to improve this image so that it's we can optimize it a little bit better, so that it's cached a little bit better. So also don't include any script to restart or anything, because Docker is actually, the container is actually going to take care of that. Actually, the orchestration engine like Kubernetes is going to take care of that if you're going to deploy it. And also use lightweight images like Alpine for production. We used Debian because it's quite easy to debug if something goes wrong, but you can use something like Alpine. So you are excited. Great. So the best thing I would suggest is to go check this course, Stephen Grider's course on Docker and Kubernetes, which is very front-end developer focused. So it's easy to follow this course, and he explains things pretty nicely. If you want to play around with Docker without having to install it, I would suggest check out katacoda.com. This will allow you to run all these commands that I've been talking about without actually having to install Docker desktop or anything. Refer the Docker documentation, which is great. Read about Docker Compose, which is another nice utility that you can use if your application is more complex than just a static website. And guess what? We have a cookbook in Vue.js website. So if you go to this cookbook, you can actually see that there is actually an article about Dockerizing a Vue.js application. So this actually covers some production recommendations on how to write your Docker file so that it behaves a little bit better, it is more optimized, and it is a little bit faster. So what we were working on was Docker for development, not really Docker for production. But if you go through this article, you can actually understand like how Docker for production also works. How should I write my Docker file so that it's suitable for production? And like I said, you can go to GCP, AWS, Azure, Heroku. They all support Docker images, so you can actually use Docker images to deploy your application in these services. So no more it works on my machine. Now it actually works on everyone's machines. Thank you. So I'm going to take some questions right now. I hope like we didn't overshoot the time slot allotted. And I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay. So I think one of the question was asked by Venkat from Startup Sanatana. He asked that please also simulate many instances of the container. So how do you?
I wish I could do it right now. Two things. One is that if I believe if I want to run multiple instances with Docker desktop, I need to have, I think, either Kubernetes or Docker Swarm, which I'm not really sure how I can do it right now. But it's certainly easy to do it. Once you have either Docker Swarm or Kubernetes. Once again, like I don't have that setup right now. I'm so sorry. But that actually works. What Venkat said, like you can actually, like I said, you can actually run multiple instances of the container so that they can take more requests. So it is actually scaled very well. And I didn't really create a production build, right? So we were talking about Docker for development today, and we were showing like how Docker can help create the same development environment across for every one of your teammates. So your teammate doesn't have to say something like, why is it not working on my machine? You can actually have everyone's machines working in the exact same way. So but yes, like what you mentioned is definitely possible. I wish I could show it off, but we'll try to do that.
Okay, we have another question, which is asked by Cestus Bet. The question is, what is fundamental difference between Kubernetes and Docker?
Okay, so yeah, this is something that confused me also in the very beginning. What Docker is basically, again, like when we talk about Docker, we are usually referring to Docker images, right? We're usually referring to Docker, the images that, that ultimately run on Docker containers. So Docker was one of the first companies to actually push for this technology, and they actually kind of popularized it. But the name Docker is it's not really right to be associated with I guess containers and stuff anymore, because what is actually running inside GCP and all might not actually be using any Docker technology. So it has kind of become an agnostic thing. But the main thing to remember is Kubernetes is actually an orchestrator. So what it actually does is, if you give it a bunch of these containers, it is going to decide how to scale it up. Like if the demand is coming, it is going to, we will be able to specify parameters to scale it up, like, from 2 to 3 or 3 to 4. And you can also specify things like at a time, let's say that I'm going to deploy this Vue.js application. How many instances, how many containers of this Vue.js application should be present at a specific time? So that is also something that we can, tell Kubernetes to do. So that is not something we can do in Docker with Docker alone. They had Docker used to have a thing called Docker Swarm. I'm not sure if it is being maintained anymore, but Docker Swarm used to be their competitor to Kubernetes. So like I said, Docker by itself doesn't actually scale the containers. It's not going to do all that orchestration stuff. The orchestration stuff is actually handled by Kubernetes. So Kubernetes will be able to, you can tell that at a time I need to run 3 containers. So if any one of those containers fail, Kubernetes is automatically going to spin a new container up, okay, to match that count. Let's say if I specify a count like number 3, I need 3 replicas of this particular container. So it's going to make sure that whatever happens, you always have those the exact number of containers running at a time. So if ever, let's say that it goes from 3 to 4, it will again bring it back down to 3. Or if let's say that if one of the containers fail, it will again bring it back to 3. So Kubernetes is an orchestrator. Docker is basically the technology that we are using to build these images and make the containers themselves. So I hope I managed to explain that in a decent way. But again, like I would really recommend checking out that Udemy course, which is pretty good. It covers both Docker and Kubernetes in a pretty in a pretty good way that front-end developers can understand. So I would suggest checking that out. Yeah.
Right. Personally, I use the same course by Stephen.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to learn front end, he has many other courses as well.
It's a pretty good course. Yeah.
Yep.
I also want to mention, like, since James has talked about his Maven tool, the Maven tool also has a Dockerized subcommand which you can use to get a decent Docker file generated for you. So you can actually try Maven if you are probably trying out Docker. So that's going to probably make it easy. But definitely there's quite a lot of things that we didn't cover. We just covered Docker for development. Docker for production is a whole other thing. And it's a pretty interesting tool to play around.
Yeah. Okay. Here's one quick question, which is, I think, not related. So I think we can quickly discuss the questions which were not related to talks.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is, so it's asked by Casey on YouTube. It's mentioning that, guys, what do you think is the best option for testing in Vue? I'm confused between Cypress and Selenium.
So we have a new thing, right, in the block called Playwright by Microsoft. Let me share my screen again, probably. Sure. So I haven't really checked it out, but I believe this is a pretty promising alternative to Selenium. A lot of the complaints that people keep talking about these new tools is that they don't really support older browsers and stuff. But and mainly, I believe they leave out WebKit also. But Playwright is a great effort by Microsoft in trying to, bring something that's an alternative that's based on top of Puppeteer, but that will actually work across Chrome, Firefox, and WebKit, which is Safari. So these things work, and you can see this listing here. But if you're really stuck with something that needs IE11 support and all that stuff, I guess Selenium is still your kind of the only choice in that regard, because it pretty much works with almost all these things. And IE11 support is something, IE11 and older, basically. If you need those kinds of supports, I guess it's something that you need to, I guess, stick with. But otherwise, if you're fine with evergreen browsers, which are Chrome, Firefox, and WebKit, then I would suggest maybe checking this out, Playwright, which seems to be a pretty good effort. But yeah, that would be my view on the whole thing. Nimit, you have anything?
Yeah. So even Gusto tried to help on the same chat, and Gusto mentions that go for Cypress, as one of the Vue test util maintainer is even a Cypress team member.
I see.
So
there you go.
Right.
That's great. That's awesome.
And Gusto also mentioned to check out Vue testing library. It's maintained by another member of Vue test utils.
Okay.
Yep.
Any comments from our panelists, like speakers here? James. James is available. Oh, okay. But yeah, I think we had a couple of good suggestions for that. Anything else?
If not, let's come to the end of this meetup. So now your next step as attendees would be to be in touch with us. So if you're first-time attendees, you can join our WhatsApp group. So it's a dedicated Vue Bangalore WhatsApp group. It sometimes have people sharing their problems, and sometimes for example, people might ask what is a good testing library and what are your experiences. So these kind of personal things are also asked there. And sometimes some company also share their opportunities on that WhatsApp group. Currently, we are around 200 people over there. So if you want, there's this invite link. You can just directly go to VueBLR-WhatsApp on Bitly. If you need it, I can share it after this as well. We are also very prevalently, we use Twitter and LinkedIn a lot, and you can follow us over there. At the end, I want to say thanks for attending. It was a nice long meetup after a long time on Saturday, and all the slides and the videos will be updated soon on our official website, which is blr.vue.community and /27, which is the meetup ID for this. So yeah, we are over time now. I would have liked if we could have had more question answer sessions, but I think respecting the time of the event, we would close now. If any panelist, if any speaker or any organizer, another community organizer want to speak, they're open to speak right now. If anybody wants to speak, we can just speak. Else, we can finish this meetup and meet at the next meetup event, which would be somewhere around mid of June. So the dates would be confirmed soon, and we are open for proposals. So we'll share that link as well. Yeah, that's about it.
That was a great session. Hope to see you guys at the next one. Thanks to all our speakers. Thanks, James. Thanks, ASCII, for helping us with the whole setup. They've been invaluable in this. I don't know if they're still hearing, but thank you, guys.
Yeah, I can give a shout out to HasGeek. So they have helped us setting up the live feed, and they have also lent their Zoom account for us to stream and host this session. So we are very HasGeek was very we are very thankful for that.
Okay, guys, signing out.